Streaming. Let's see if it's working. We're going to see if it connects. And it says excellent connection. We will hear soon from T Tank Berry or someone else to let us know if they can hear us. And we are going to check the YouTube itself to see if the channel interprets us. And excellent connection. We will hear soon from. We hear a echo, which is exactly what we want. Everybody hit that upvote immediately, please. And I want to thank you all so much for joining us, those of you who do. And you have no idea how important that upvote is. We are going to now conduct the call. And by that, we go over to Infinite on Microsoft Teams and hit the audio button. It says audio call to disambiguate it from video call. And it's clunky. The whole system is clunky. It's really clunky. So let's see if our dear friend Aristides responds. There you are, sir. Welcome back aboard. And we are joined by Troy Bellamy. So, dear Troy Bellamy, say hi to our listeners before we turn to Aristides to do the blurb so we can see if you're registering, okay?
Yeah, hello?
Yes, we hear you, and you're registering on the online broadcasting software. So I'll ask you to just be patient and just sit down and enjoy your cup of coffee or whatever you're drinking at the moment, if anything, of course. And our man Aristides will go into the blurb. If you're ready, Aristides, how do you feel about that?
Okay. I'm ready, and I'll try to make it quick so we don't keep
no. You
Troy
don't
waiting too long.
Well, we understand that, but you don't need to make it too quick. We've got a lot of important points to make for our listeners, primarily, of course, you know, all of the developments that have rendered our dissemination even more suppressed than it's been. So, and for just these reasons of the war, I was suppressed because of speaking of the genocide in the Gaza, and look where we are now. That's what happens when you suppress voices like mine own. But back to Aristides, and use your voice and let people know about the situation.
All right. Well, the situation is, as soon as you show up, you should immediately hit the thumbs up, upvote, or like button there. Throw a like on. Very important. Got to keep that algorithm on the up and up. There are downvotes placed by some idiots with bots and who don't have a life, and but that skews the algorithm down, and it makes Douglas less likely to appear in search results or suggested content, and to find new viewers, and to help people navigate this strange, scary world, and to find financial support, which he needs. So do hit that as soon as you get here. You need to be logged into YouTube to do that. If not, it'll just tell you no, and then you can't really do anything if you're not logged in. So if you don't know how to do that, using a Gmail, which you probably have, should do that. Or just, you know, if you have no kind of account, you just want to hit make account or something. But I think a Gmail is the easiest way. If you have multiple Gmails, there's a little menu up in the corner for your account. You can switch actually between, and you can like multiple times with multiple accounts, or even with one account. You can make sub-channels, even if they're just empty, dummy sub-channels under the account, and upvote multiple times to give Douglas that boost here in the Douglas Dietrich democracy, as we call it. So
yes, that's right.
You always wanted to vote more than once for something that you really care about, right? So,
that's right. Yes, we allow that here.
Yeah, we allow that here. So, and while you're in that same menu, you can do that under switch account. But while you're in there, make sure restricted mode is off. That disallows age-restricted content, which can be labeled such automatically by screenings by YouTube and whatnot, based on whatever. So just make sure that is off, so it doesn't impair your ability to listen to Douglas. So, yep, do that, and also make sure you're subscribed. If you see a button that says subscribe, then press it. If you don't see a button and you're not sure if you're subscribed, you can go to his main channel page. Don't click off of the window right now, but go to his main channel page. You can check there. Should say subscribed. Even if you've done so in the past, it's very likely you could be unsubscribed at some point for some reason. So do check that occasionally and turn on the notification bell, the little bell icon. Click that. You can get up a little menu, and you can actually click all instead of personalized. Just means YouTube decides when to send you a notification. You click all, and then every time Douglas comes on, it'll pop up a little handy thing to click and get you here. Even I use it. So nothing to remember, nothing to do, just click, and here you are. So definitely do those things. And at some point, try all the other buttons, except for the thumbs down, obviously. The share button will generate a link, basically the same link you could grab right out of the browser bar, but YouTube will know you clicked that, so that'll probably help the algorithm. You can make a little, you might see a button that says clip. I'm not sure it's on everything, every device. I don't think I saw it on the phone, but if you see a button that says clip, you can clip out a little 1 minute sampler, even from the live while it's going, which is neat. Although I don't know, seems kind of awkward to try to do that while you're listening. But or during the replay, you can do that as well. Replays after it's all over, it converts to a regular video on YouTube. So you can do that. You can, maybe a save button there. So try all of that. There will not be comments enabled under the window as would be usual after the live. They would normally open up the comments below, which is different than the live chat on the side. And as Douglas has said the past few times, there was a point in time when he was restricted, and that was shut off or shut out. The last episode where comments were enabled, if you go, again, don't leave this window, or page now, but if you go to his main account page there, and there's some basically main tabs up at the top, home, videos, live. If you click on live, that is the important list of the these live streams. So if you look at that, that is in chronological order, and the green hair episode, as we call it, is the last one where you can leave comments. So please
February
do feel free to.
February 4th.
February 4th. Feel free to leave comments on that or anyone before. Don't have to be related to the program you're leaving it on, or even be, extremely, insightful or even relevant. Just leave any comment you like, because then YouTube sees that as, interaction. We do hope you have something nice and, appropriate to say, or inspired by Douglas, but whatever you like, really. If you use too many bad words, YouTube might take the comment away, so don't do that. So yeah, leave comments anytime before that. What else?
Meaning any episode preceding February 4th is available for commentary to be entered. Yeah. And don't be afraid to do so, because we do get notifications and your comments will be read aloud.
Yes. Yeah. Including the 4th, that one, right?
Yeah, including the 4th.
Or before, yeah.
Yeah.
Green hair or before, yeah.
That's right. And the episode, it's always important to emphasize this, the episode that got our commentary disabled, which also in turn restricts our distribution, which makes it all the more important for you yourself to spread the word, as Aristides will get back to emphasizing. But just understand that that episode needs to be listened to, because that's the episode that resulted in this suppression. And that is the February 8th episode, which is the 25th Winter Olympics episode. So the 25th Winter Olympics episode, which displays very plainly for all to see my dy sticky aces, which means my double row of eyelashes, the same kind of genetic predisposition that manifested in Elizabeth Taylor, which causes eyelashes to shed all the time into my eyes, and how would I say it? At which times I experience excruciating agony. That is plainly visible for you to see on that episode. So 25th Olympiad episode, we'll call that the double eyelash episode, is the one that got us suppressed even more so than we already were. So it's that episode I discuss the genocide in the Gaza with great passion, and every episode thereafter should also be reviewed and upvoted. And our latest episode, make certain to review that at your leisure later and upvote that. Back to Aristides.
Yes, yes. Please do keep all that in mind. Interaction is key, as is sharing the content with whoever may be interested, and even people that don't know that they should be interested yet. And surely there will be a process of some type of shock as they acclimate to a mode of information and insight that not accustomed, but they will come to appreciate it. And share as far and wide as you can. Hit that share, grab the link, post it anywhere. Link is good for both during the live and the replay. During the replay, at least on the PC, you can right click at a certain time and generate a link to that time when something is being talked about that you want to specifically share and direct somebody right to that time. That is handy, because it is difficult to if you just tell them, oh, here's the episode and go to so and so. Sometimes, especially on a phone, difficult to like scroll to a certain minute and second there, while you're fat thumbing it on the phone. So you make a handy link that gets them right to that time. That can be helpful. But even more than distributing is contributing. And Douglas does this not just to as a public service to the world, but he does need to do it for money. Is officially his job, his recognized job. He does need to work. What would you call it? Like a working? Is it like a working disabled program, or is it like
what was your
the 250%?
Yeah, understood. 250% working disabled program. So it's essentially how would I say it? It is a certain conditional aspect that is not available to many people, and those of you who don't have it are probably it's very complicated. Honestly, I only got on it through an extraordinary convergence of circumstances, one of them being the fact that I knew about it because I worked for the government for over 10 years. But all that being said, I do want people to understand it's part of Social Security disability insurance, and this is totally separate from Social Security. I do not have Social Security, which is the government essentially putting you on a welfare program that theoretically you've paid into, but many people are on Social Security that have never put into it, whereas SSDI is exclusively for people who have worked all their lives. So I do want people to know that I've had 3 separate careers, and through those 3 separate careers, the taxes that I've paid have gone into repaying myself through SSDI, and it is all my own money coming back to me, basically in a stipend. And the reason I can say that legally and correctly is because I paid enormous amounts of money in terms of taxes for money that was never paid to myself. Because when I was a care provider for my parents for 11 years, I was paid, or rather recognized that I should be paid, for 48 hours a day care every single day of the year. And so I was working what was recognized 48 hours a day, meaning 2 days every day. I put in 2 days worth of work every day for 11 years, and I never got a penny for that. because of a convergence of circumstances that forced me to give all the money to the state of California in what was called the Share of Cost program in order to maintain my parents' medical insurance. And there's a whole reason for why this had to be done, having to do with my father's military service for over 30 years, and the fact that the military would have given his wife free medical care all of her life, but the local military base closed down because I exposed the mass industrial scale human child sex trafficking that was ongoing at the Presidio military base of San Francisco. As a result, my mother was too old by that time that I had the base shut down to transfer into the VA system. They would accept my father in a lateral transfer from the military system into the VA system, which is not military. It is a civilian welfare system, but they would not accept my mother past the age of 65. So I had to get her insured by the state of California through Medicare and Medi-Cal. And in order to do that, I had to pay share of costs, which meant that they kept all of the money in retention for themselves to pay themselves for my being recognized as care provider so that my parents could be insured. So I sacrificed everything just to make certain my parents were medically cared for 11 years. But when they died, then the feds came and said, well, you've earned all this money, 48 hours of work every day of the year for 11 years. We want the taxes on it. I said I never got a penny for it, but they wouldn't accept that. And in the end, I had to hire an attorney, a tax attorney, and pay hundreds of thousands of dollars to the United States federal government in taxes that I never was paid, and I had no money by which to pay those taxes in order to avoid federal prison for tax evasion. Now, of course, what I get back through SSDI is all of that money being paid back to me in a stipend. But in exchange, I'm required to work in what's called a 250% working disabled program. So this is what my work is. And so how's that for a complicated, convoluted situation? But hopefully each time I tell the tale, it becomes clearer and easier for people to remember, because it's very important for them to know what I've been through. Okay, back to Aristides.
That is the very important backstory, but the short story is Douglas has been screwed over 6 ways from Sunday.
Yes, thank you.
And yet he's still out here doing this for people. It's not really for him. He could easily say, you know, I've had too much in life and fuck everybody. But he didn't, and he's out here still doing this despite all odds, and he deserves your financial support for doing so. The easiest way is at his PayPal. There is a link in the chat for that. You don't ever need to find the link. It is handy, but all you have to do is go to PayPal and type Douglas D. Diedrich, one word, and that will get you there. If you forget that, just type Douglas Diedrich and search for him. Worst case, but make sure it's an Asian-looking Douglas Diedrich, in case there's any others. Yeah, Douglas D. Diedrich. It's always right on the front thumbnail there for the program, as is the website, which you can go to, douglasdiedrich.com. Hard to forget. It's about the most obvious, website he could have. And he does have 2 PayPals. The one is the business one. The first one we mentioned is the personal one. But the important thing there at the website is if you don't have a PayPal, there is a button, not the one. Do not look at the button in the middle. Do not press it. It doesn't. I'm going to press it. It's a decoy button. Yeah, nothing happens. It just says site can't. Yeah, that's a dummy button because somebody screwed up his website. But the one up in the upper right corner, yellow, can't miss it. Yellow, it says donate. Click on that. That accesses his other PayPal. Important thing there is you can pay there not being logged on, or if you don't have a PayPal, just with a credit card. So, not having PayPal is not an excuse. Not being able to find the link is not really an excuse, because all I have to remember is things like Douglas Diedrich and Douglas D. Diedrich. And so you think you can do that. easy to get to the sites by memory. So if you click on that yellow button, there's one that says donate with PayPal, which you could do, but on this one it takes a little few percent business tax for his commercial account. If you throw a whole pile of money in that one, he's not going to complain. But try to hit the other one. The important thing here, though, is you can the credit card without being logged in, or the Venmo, which a lot of people use Venmo. Now you can go one to the other there. You can click on the Venmo donate and use that. Or if you're just in your Venmo, I believe if you access it, something was called the Visa Plus function, which we found for the guy that day who swore he was going to shower Douglas with money. And he said, how exactly do we do that? Do I do that? And he said, can I pay with Venmo? And when we found that out, we said, yes, in fact, do this. Here's exactly what you do. And he just completely ignored that and didn't. I believe he didn't pay Douglas any money at all.
Of course not.
Because he seemed insane. But you can use your Venmo either there by clicking on that, or just going in your Venmo, and then you should be able to find I think it's Visa Plus, and then it'll say, hey, what PayPal you want to send it to, and you type Douglas D. Dietrich, and then send him as much as you can afford, as often as you can, even so much as setting up a recurring payment if you're able to do so. I'm not sure. They most likely give you a flexibility. Once a month is fine. If it's a larger amount, maybe even more often. Maybe every, I don't know if you can do every 2 weeks or when you get paid, or I don't know. I should look into that. But if you can tailor the exact day, best thing is, every day you get paid, it just peels off some and sends it to Douglas, and it's gone before you know it, and you'll never miss it. But he needs it, so please do donate as much and as often, or contribute as often as possible. And I'll look into that options for the recurring payment in case people are interested. So if all else fails and you're living in somehow receiving this on a I don't know. If you're off the grid and living in a cabin, you don't have any of these things, and you just want to send, walk down to your post office and get a money order and put it in the mail, you can do that too. You can, if you need to clarify any contact details, you can get Douglas at his email. We'll put that in the chat, but it's another one. It's really easy to remember. Douglas Dwayne Dietrich at gmail.com. So there's that. And last but not least, we could put the address in there. We may not have to put that every time, but he can provide his address if you need to actually send him physical mail, hopefully, including a large money order or even a check if you can. If you're homebound and you can't get out, and all you can do is hand an envelope to the postman, with a large check in it for Douglas, and gets to that, that'll be okay too. That's okay.
Excellent.
Mm-hmm. Yep. We don't care if it's your check. Just make sure it's big.
Yeah.
Grandma won't miss it. Grandma won't. She will never miss it.
I love it. Yes.
Just like $1,000. Just she'll never know. By the time anybody realizes what's going on, it won't matter. So
she'll be in a better place.
She'll be in right, and so will Douglas. See,
yeah, that's right.
So will you, knowing that you've helped and helped Douglas make the world a better or at the least more interesting place. Making it a better place, considering current times, could be a challenge, but
yes.
Sure that'll be quite the topic for tonight.
Indeed.
Yeah. And okay, back to the program here. The title bar is always filled up with very interesting looking things, and then often has asterisks, that refer to specific footnotes in the description. There's not always those, but you should always click the see more and look at the whole description. A little shorter today, only half an entire page instead of a whole entire page of Draconic, but always a lot of fascinating topics and terminology there. Douglas wants to acknowledge as far as the things of interest to talk about at this time, historically or culturally or whatnot. And at the very least, you see a lot of characters and language that you don't always get to see all in one place. How he does all this, I still don't know, but
just one of those natural talents. It's
yeah.
kind of like an idiot savant.
Yeah, right. Well, savant, yes, yeah, you know. The other part, you know, you know, that's a matter of opinion. I don't think so, but
thank you. Appreciate
I don't think. Anyway, check all that out, and I think that's about it.
Thank you. That was beautiful. Bless
Yeah.
you. And we couldn't do it without you, which is why we're so glad that our man Aristides has been tending to his health. He's experienced minor surgical procedure
Okay,
recently,
good.
and we congratulate him on having pulled through. Okay.
Yep, all good. A very routine thing. Oh, I'm better for it. And
Yeah.
I was kind of a virgin there. Some people I talked to were like, "Yeah, I have surgeries all the time." I'm like, "What?"
Yeah, that's
Is
pretty
this-
alarming. That's
Yeah,
yeah.
is this a hobby of yours?
Yeah, you don't want it to become regular, no.
Stuff up?
Yeah. Oh
Yeah,
my
right.
God.
Yeah. Some-
Who are these people that you're talking to? What's their age bracket?
I don't know. One guy said, I guess he was like a real big like college athlete, and then like, you know, some people, these crazy people want to go out there and like do like triathlons or something, you know. And it's like, you know, bless you, but like it's also fucking nuts. And you know,
Is that how he fucked
I don't
himself
know.
up? Is that the guy who's having all the surgery?
something.
Yeah. Or
Yeah, I
someone
mean,
else?
if you're exercising to the point where you need surgeries to repair, you know, but
That's
I don't know.
bad.
He said, yeah, I've had like a number, and then you know, some people, I don't know. It's new to me, but to
Well,
some people, to actually,
that's a good point. That
yeah,
shows that some people, you know, let's just say that vice is virtue taken to excess, and some people
yeah,
do over exercise. And if you're athletic to the point where you're tearing your body apart,
yeah,
that's pretty
yeah,
bad. That's
yeah.
that's
Don't do that. Take it easy sometimes. Kick
yeah.
back and put on Douglas Dietrich's live stream
Thank you.
and
Yes.
sit back and enjoy. You know, and
Yes.
exercise your mind.
Yes.
And yeah,
Thank you.
yeah,
For those of you asking about the photograph embedded in thumbnail of live stream, you will notice that despite the fact that I'm, by some definition, almost naked, or certainly some people have made that comment, in Chinatown, I'm not being disturbed by anyone, and nobody is disturbed by myself. Do note that all of the little packets that you see on my arm sleeves and other areas are blades. I'm holding two blades in my hands, and all of the other sheaths that you see are blades. There's blades inside of them that are, of course, ready for access. And so, that being said, I do want people to know I'm rather disturbed by how I'm beginning to age out, and I've lost definition in my stomach, and I feel that I'm paunching out. So,
same, buddy, same. But you know, we can all work on these things. Douglas, however, is hoping to have a surgery of his own.
That's
Maybe he can
right. That's right.
talk about that.
So I've got to save up, and I need everyone's help to do that. So we're still aiming for $6,000. Everybody contribute what you can, and we will, of course, try and keep you updated. All right. That being said, we welcome Troy Bellamy. So, dear sir, as an educator, you know, your own thoughts on this. You're in the belly of the beast down there in Florida, where, of course, there's something in the water, and everything is strange. You've had your own cold spell with iguanas literally falling from the trees. You know, I think that damn, I would so much just want to eat iguana, and you're so privileged to have that opportunity, yet you never take advantage of it. So tell us how life is
Yeah.
going for you. Yeah.
No, brother's not eating iguana. I'm sorry. I'm scared of the regular little bitty lizards that crawl around Florida, and I've been in Florida all my life, so that's pretty tough. But we got a little cold spell now. Where I live at, there are not any iguanas. There are very few. They're more in South Florida because they got released, when some of these aquariums got destroyed by hurricanes and all the reptiles got out and they just proliferated all throughout the Everglades and whatnot. But yet and still, we get the cold snap up here as well, just for a couple of days. When it gets below 70 degrees, we break out our fur coats and everything.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how it is in Florida.
Oh, so tell us, obviously, I think the war brought you on, or what else brought you on? Certainly.
Yeah, man, I haven't been on in a little minute, and hadn't said a whole lot. I'm not going to say much tonight. We know what it is. It's the same thing that I've been saying for months and years, that, all this stuff is informed by not only racism, but a desire to deflect from these Epstein files. The man said it himself in 2012 on a video when he tried to project his mindset from President Obama. Beware, everybody, in 2012, he's going to try to stay in office. He's going to start a war with Iran and hold the elections. And this is exactly the same playbook. You got Lindsey Graham. The hypocrisy is what's scary to me. He'll come on and you hear Lindsey Graham say Donald Trump is a kook, and then 5 minutes later say Donald Trump's not a kook. What are you, man? And then the whole disingenuous nature of it. The thing is, Americans at large, we benefit none from it. We don't even get American pride out of attacking Iran. We're not going to get a single dollar. We didn't get any money from the tariffs, and now the countries and the businesses that were tariffed have the right now to sue the government to get their money back. How does that help America?
Yeah.
As a former stockbroker, I'm sitting here and I watch how the markets are all in an uproar tonight, and oil prices are down, are going way up. So you're going to see the stock market sell off tomorrow, and you're going to see gas prices go up well above $3 a gallon.
Yes,
well above for a little while. Because what happens is the only reason that that really we got in the war, he's trying to affect the economy in China because China's roaring. So he shut down the Strait of Hormuz, and that bottlenecks up their ability to get oil and other things like that and keep their country going. What do you think they're going to do? They're going to retaliate with higher prices. All of this is going to hurt us. He doesn't care because he's got a couple $1 billion in an account in Qatar, that's undetectable.
Yes, but Qatar itself is under attack. But go on.
And again, that kind of gives me pause, because if Iran gets hit by the United States and Israel, why the hell would they bomb Dubai and Qatar and Yemen and places like that? That doesn't make no sense. That sounds like false flag. That sounds like projection again to me, to try and make them look like the bad guy. These people are reeling from being hit by major bombs, not just recently, but 6-8 months ago. So then I know they're not just going to arbitrarily just bull in a China shop and tear everything up. I don't believe that. I want to hear, and I heard earlier this morning they had an Iranian spokesperson on MSNBC, and he denied all. And I'm not saying I believe him blankly, but I certainly don't believe Donald Trump. He was the same person that said they obliterated all of their military capability. Now all of a sudden, Witkoff comes back and says they're 1 week away from a nuclear bomb, and now we got to go to what? There is something deep in those Epstein files that not only were the hackers in Iran going to release, China was going to release, and then on top of that, the economy is going to take a major hit, and he's trying to rally Americans behind, the American ideal of pride, but we were never attacked. We were never attacked. And then the silliest thing is he's saying he wants to free the people of Iran so that they can protest freely in the streets. What the fuck is he talking about? He's mad at the people in Minnesota. He sent ICE into Minnesota to keep them from saying bad things about him. He took Jimmy Kimmel off the air. And I heard people crying about tonight, the Iran has shut down the internet. You pulled a whole television host off the air because he made some jokes about Donald Trump. What do we talk? Where's the outrage for that? Where's the outrage over so Iran has 90 million people, and they're mad at a couple of religious clerics who don't have any real power. And then the thing is that bothers me is that you did all this bombing, you jumped on them Iran hasn't invaded a single country. They haven't done anything. They've actually complied with the IEPA stuff. Excuse me.
No worries.
And now, but where's your outrage over how Donald Trump treated Zelensky? This is the same thing. So why not? Russia invaded it. Why not jump on Russia? What's the problem with jumping on Russia? We have no financial ties to Russia. We don't export and import with Russia. So why are we trying to protect them? Because Donald Trump is an asset of Israel and Russia.
Yes, absolutely.
And those two countries, as much as people don't understand, those two countries are genetically and culturally aligned. Half of the people that live in Israel are disaffected Russian Jews from the Bolshevik Revolution all the way out.
Yes, absolutely. Historically correct.
Yeah, I could teach history too if I needed
it. Yes.
But that's my rant, so I'm gonna listen.
Oh, well, I think that was fine. And thank you so much for sharing that. We really appreciate your coming on, and we want more of it. Obviously, we would appreciate your coming on more regularly. You're always welcome here. And
I appreciate it.
yeah, you've never worn out your welcome. And so, such having been said, what about, I guess before you go, I guess I have to sneeze. Could you at least give us a little bit of something on, shall we say, Aristides has sent an image here. Let's take a look at that. Oh, my voice. And,
even Putin himself admitted that there are 2 million people from the Soviet Union and Russia who have migrated to Israel. And that's why he's not going to help Iran.
There we are. There we are. And
Boom.
bang on. Bang on. Vladimir Putin was asked, this is according to the image presented by Aristides, but it has a source. It's legitimate. This is June 2025 at the St. Petersburg Economic Forum. This is on record. It's not a rumor. Vladimir Putin was asked why he is not assisting Iran. And his response, Israel today is almost a Russian-speaking country. 12 million people from the Soviet Union and Russia live there. We take that into account. There we have it.
There is a video. I didn't put the video yet because it's just awkward to put videos through the chat, but I'll put that too.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that profoundly. And okay, so it appears my sneezing has passed. I do want people to know that I came back after several days of partying. As I have mentioned, I don't expect people to retain this information because there's just so much involved with Asian Lunar New Year that for most Westerners, you'd have to be a student of Asian culture to really absorb all this. But when it comes to the Asian Lunar New Year, it essentially starts with a son-in-law day and it ends with a son-in-law day. We're in what's the end part of the core celebration, which is followed by this Lantern Festival, which is still ongoing. But I celebrated the main of everything I needed to celebrate over the past few days and should be home the next few days to catch up with everyone on Team Dietrich domestically before returning to the Estates for other elements of Asian culture that are to be celebrated. I want people to understand that in the interim, what's going on right now, or the past few days, has obviously left me, shall we say, a bit weary of staying on too long tonight. We're going to try and make it to midnight, maybe a little past midnight, and then we're going to probably end live stream around that time. But I'll start right into monologue and ask everyone to interject whenever they feel like it. I'll ask Troy Bellamy to stay on if he wishes and just interject whenever he feels like it, because I will be bringing up a lot of topics and he can put in his interjections at that point if he wishes. We have, of course, in Taiwan and Japan, a number of other holidays that are, well, Tuesday will be Girls' Day. Nevertheless, we teach the lads at the estate about this because many of them identify as girls, or some of them do because many of them are non-binary or considering gender transition. Obviously, that's not allowed until they're 18. But which was, it was after my son was of legal age that his own transition was performed surgically. And I do want everyone to understand that this is not, we're certainly not indoctrinating them into this kind of mindset. It's simply that they're allowed to be who they are, and many of them are adopted from families that rejected them because of being discovered that they had gender issues or were identified as non-binary or did not identify to conventional gender roles and were ergo rejected by the families. As a result, they were saved from abusive orphanages or being adopted out to abusive families that would have forced them into a mindset that was against their will. So all of that being said, ours is a nurturing environment, and therefore they will be taught about Girls' Day. But I will be here through Monday and trying to catch up with everyone on Team D-Trick. We will. I'll also be back probably early on Wednesday, and I will be hosting transmission then, and then afterwards catching up again with people on Team D-Trick. Until the weekend, when we have the Chinese New Year celebrations for the tourists in San Francisco. Bear in mind that Asians have this kind of Asian Lunar New Year that's very family-oriented, very in-house, and then we have all our celebrations we perform for the tourists. So that's important to recollect, is that if you really want to experience Asian Lunar New Year, marry into an Asian family. Okay, I do want to thank Brooke Hagberg for her $100 in auto payment. Brooke Hagberg is this angel in Canada. I love her beyond expression. Hope you're listening, honey. Amy Como, I hope you're listening, honey. And if not, I hope you're listening on review. I hope you've heard what I've said about the On shoes and how my chiropractor loves them. He really complimented me on my new shoes that Amy Como purchased for me online. When I was on the chiropractic table, I was afraid he was going to snatch them off my feet to take them for himself. I put them to the test yesterday. I really put them to the test. Yesterday, I was far more physically active than I've been in a while, and those shoes carried me through. They're an impressive pair of technological masterpieces. And to launch our surfboards on the night tide tonight with the lighter waves, is anyone up for Asperger? Seriously. On the other side of the Pacific, the hungry hegemon of mainland China is literally running short of donkey for dinner. Now, for those of you who don't know, the long-eared equine has long been a staple meat in northern China by way of a niche market that you've probably never heard of, but a collapse in the local supply has sent prices soaring, with ripple effects from Africa to South America. I was fortunate enough to dine on donkey last night, and along with all the booze I consumed, it's probably still impacting me today. And in the digital equivalent of snatching coins from someone's outstretched hands, South Korean police seized crypto by posting the password online. Now let's everybody prone paddle on our longboards to tackle the big waves in the night. Trump has rolled the iron dice. Yesterday, Israel launched a daylight attack on Iran's capital with American aid, abetance, and assistance. The CIA helped pinpoint a gathering of Iranian leaders. Then Israel struck. Earlier yesterday, Donald Trump launched into a risky Israeli-orchestrated war of choice against the Iranian regime that is transforming the greater Middle East. Once again, America is at war. And once again, what is it good for? When his fantasies unravel, Trump has a really bad habit of abusing power to force his will upon an uncooperative world. This weekend, Israel and its satrap, United States, launched a major joint attack on Iran. President Trump himself announcing that the Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, Iran's 86-year-old supreme leader, has been decapitated. The American empire is once again on the front lines of conflict in Iran with the desire to overthrow a nation's government. How long war lasts and where it leads Iran is not up to just Israel or their Putinista puppet Trump. The fate of a war Trump sees as shaping his legacy is now in the hands of both the regime itself, that is declared as our enemy, and the people inside Iran. During this February 28th into March 1st weekend, at least 7 nations, remember that song, Takes a 7-Nation Army to Hold Us Back? I believe that was a black empowerment song, as a matter of fact. At least 7 nations have been drawn into an escalating conflict in the Middle East. The United States, Iran, Israel, Qatar, Bahrain, Kuwait, and the UAE, the United Arab Emirates. Israeli forces and their American lackeys attacked Tehran, and Iran responded by attacking United States military bases in Bahrain, Qatar, Kuwait, and the UAE. Explosions were also heard in the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan and Riyadh, the capital of Saudi Arabia. To reiterate, the United States President Donald Trump ordered military strikes on Tehran, terminating the Iranian tyrant Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, and several other nations over the weekend were sucked into this wider expanding conflict. In this crisis, the King of England's visit to America could be the big moment of jeopardy, but I will return to that. While Mexico burns in the cartel wars, Donald John Trump has launched a capricious war of remote-control regime change on Iran, whereby Tehran has discovered Moscow is but a fair-weather friend. Netanyahu and his sock puppet Trump's unprovoked attack on Iran is an illegal and reckless act of aggression that has no mandate. Neither preemptive nor legal, the Israeli strikes on Iran have blown up international law itself in a clear violation of the United Nations Charter. The American president has chosen war at Israel's behest. He may imagine he has scored an easy win, but the world is likely to pay a very steep price. Nemesio Crescentes, a.k.a. the drug lord El Mencho, leading the Jalisco New Generation cartel, was killed by security forces. Almost immediately, citizens had to flee as their cars were set alight and tourists were left stunned by thick columns of smoke rising out of Mexico's second-largest city. This isn't simply a domestic issue for Mexico. El Mencho was the DEA's most wanted drug lord, whose criminal enterprise flooded these United States with dangerous narcotics such as heroin, fentanyl, methamphetamines, and cocaine. Inside El Mencho's own personal arsenal were high-powered weapons, 400 gunmen, drones, and landmines. His cartel are cop killers with militant training camps and disturbing practices for new recruits, which include cannibalism. Terrifying stories of this cartel and the terror they enforce have been told before, but what's next at the Tijuana border? The Jalisco New Generation cartel has a history of skirmishes with the Sinaloa cartel for dominance in Baja California, a lucrative trafficking route. Indeed, Norte Americano blood is already being spilled, with the FBI investigating indicators, their term, of a potential nexus to terrorism in the West 6th Street mass shooting of downtown Austin, Texas, where the mass shooter was probably motivated by the Iran attacks, per the Quran found in his car. 3 were killed and 14 were hospitalized before the mass murderer shooting at Buford's bar was himself put down by lethal force. Yet regardless of literal wildfires, combusting areas larger than New York City on the Texas home front, Eretz Israel and its United States have ignited a campaign to topple the Islamic Republic, with little thought to what cometh hereafter. Their actions are no different from Putin's invasion of the Ukraine or the Rwandan dictator Paul Kagame's invasion of the Democratic Republic of Congo. What's truly remarkable about President Trump's decision to move forward with a wide-scale attack on Iran is just how little he has talked about or explained any coherent rationale to the American people. As for Iran, its Look East doctrine resulted in a strategic partnership with Putin sans any strategic commitment. Appearing to link his Iran attack to his 2020 electoral loss in a social media post, President Trump says that Iran tried to stop Trump and now faces renewed war with United States. Again, his words verbatim, horrible English. The man never even learned to spell, or actually place words in semantic context. In such context, historically or topically, not literally or linguistically, President Donald Trump has launched a capricious and personal war on Iran that is more ambitious, politically and militarily, than any past American imperial campaign in the perpetually volatile Middle East. In an 8-minute video released in the wee hours of Saturday morning, while most Americans were still asleep, he announced that his objectives are the abolishment of the theocratic regime, total capitulation by its Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, or else the death of all its members at American hands, and an end to the mulacracy's controversial nuclear program. At the advanced technology end of the spectrum, an unmanned suicide drone that was initially tested by a San Diego warship in December was deployed in combat for the first time yesterday during the Israeli-conspired American attack on Iran. If you want to understand why Greater Israel and its subject American empire are attacking and attempting to subjugate Iran, you must hear this historic speech by the Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi, or by their own Farsi dialect, Abbas Araghchi, or Araghchi, delivered earlier this month at the 16th Al Jazeera Forum held in Doha. Now, none of you will be able to find his speech, and certainly if you did, you wouldn't be able to read the Arabic. So I will translate it for you. You will only hear it here. No one else will translate from the Arabic for you what this man said. Excellencies, distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. Now understand, I am reading. I will be reading for the next 3 to 5 minutes, however long it takes. I don't usually allow reading from myself, let alone anyone else. This is an exception I'm making tonight. Until I indicate otherwise, understand This is not Douglas Dietrich talking. This is the Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi. And in his own words, it is a privilege to arrest you, or he says address. Sorry, Arabic is maddeningly small. It is the language of insects. It's microscopic, okay? Cut me some slack. It is a privilege to address you at this distinguished forum and discuss the profound question of our region, Palestine. Let me begin with the fact that the region has learned through decades of painful experience, and that the world is learning again at a terrible human cost. Palestine is not one issue among many. Palestine is the defining question of justice in West Asia and beyond. It is the strategic and moral compass of our region. It is a test of whether international law has meaning, whether human rights have universal value, and whether global institutions exist to protect the weak or merely to rationalize the power of the strong. For generations, the Palestinian crisis was understood primarily as the consequence of an illegal occupation and the denial of an inalienable right, the right of a people to self-determination. But today, we must recognize that the crisis has moved far beyond the parameters of occupation alone. What we are witnessing in Gaza is not merely war. It is not a conflict between equal parties. It is not an unfortunate byproduct of security measures. It is the deliberate destruction of civilian life on a massive scale. It is genocide. The human cost of Israel's atrocities in Gaza have wounded the conscience of humanity. It has torn open the heart of the Muslim world, and it has also shaken millions beyond it. Christians, Jews, and people of all faiths who still believe that the life of a child is not a bargaining chip, that starvation is not a weapon, that hospitals are not battlefields, and that the killing of families is not self-defense. Palestine today is not simply a tragedy. It is a mirror held up to the world. It reflects not only the suffering of Palestinians, but also the moral failure of those who had the power to stop this catastrophe and chose instead to justify it, enable it, or normalize it. But Palestine and Gaza are not only a humanitarian crisis. It has become the platform for something larger and more dangerous, an expansionist project pursued under the banner of security. This project has three consequences, each of them profound, each of them alarming. The first consequence is global. The Israeli regime's conduct in Palestine and the impunity granted to it have deeply damaged the international legal order. We must say this clearly. The world is moving toward a condition where international law no longer is respected and governs international relations. What is perhaps most dangerous is the precedent being established that if a state has sufficient political cover and protection, it may bomb civilians, besiege populations, target infrastructure, assassinate individuals across borders, and still demand to be regarded as lawful. This is not merely a Palestinian problem. It is a global problem. We are witnessing not only the tragedy of Palestine, but the transformation of the world into a place where the law is replaced by force. The second consequence is regional. Israel's expansionist project has had a direct and destabilizing impact on the security of all countries in the region. The Israeli regime now openly violates borders. It breaches sovereignties. It assassinates official dignitaries. It conducts terrorist operations. It expands its reach in multiple theaters, and it does so not discreetly, but with a sense of entitlement, because it has learned that international accountability will never come. Let us be candid. If the Gaza issue is settled through destruction and forced displacement, if that becomes the model, then the West Bank will be next. Annexation will become policy. This is the essence of what has long been called the Greater Israel Project. The question, therefore, is not whether Israel's actions threaten Palestinians alone. The question is whether the region will accept a future in which borders are temporary, sovereignty is conditional, and security is determined not by law or diplomacy, but by the ambitions of a militarized occupier. The third consequence is structural and perhaps the most dangerous. Israel's expansionist project requires that neighboring countries be weakened militarily, technologically, economically, and socially, so that the Israeli regime permanently enjoys the upper hand. Under this project, Israel is free to expand its military arsenal without limits, including weapons of mass destruction that remain outside any inspection regime. Yet other countries are demanded to disarm. Others are pressured to reduce defensive capacity. Others are punished for scientific progress. Others are sanctioned for building resilience. Nobody should be confused. This is not arms control. It is not non-proliferation. It is not security. It is the enforcement of permanent inequality. Israel must have a military, intelligence, and strategic edge, and others must remain vulnerable. This is a doctrine of domination. Ladies and gentlemen, this is why the Palestinian question is not only a humanitarian issue. It is a strategic issue. It is not only about Gaza and the West Bank. It is about the future of our region and the rules of the world. So what must be done? It is not enough to express concern. It is not enough to issue statements. It is not enough to mourn. We need a coordinated strategy of action, legal, diplomatic, economic, and security-based, rooted in the principles of international law and collective responsibility. First, the international community must support legal mechanisms without hesitation. Second, there must be consequences for violations. We call for the comprehensive and targeted sanctions against Israel, including an immediate arms embargo, the suspension of military and intelligence cooperation, restrictions on officials, and banning trade. Third, we need a credible political horizon grounded in law. The international community must affirm the end of occupation, the right of return, and compensation in accordance with international law, and the establishment of a unified and independent Palestinian state with Al-Quds al-Sharif as its capital. Fourth, the humanitarian crisis must be treated as a matter of urgent international responsibility. Collective punishment must never be normalized. Fifth, the regional states must coordinate to protect sovereignty and deter aggression. The principle must be clear. Security cannot be built on the insecurity of others. And finally, the Islamic world, the Arab world, and the nations of the global south must build a united diplomatic front. The Organization of Islamic Cooperation, the Arab League, and regional organizations must move beyond symbolism toward coordinated action, legal support, diplomatic initiatives, economic measures, and strategic messaging. This is not about confrontation. It is about preventing the region from being reshaped by force. Dear colleagues, let no one miscalculate. A region cannot be kept stable by allowing one actor to act above the law. The doctrine of impunity will not produce peace. It will produce wider conflict. The path to stability is clear. justice for Palestine, accountability for crimes, an end to occupation and apartheid, and a regional order built on sovereignty, equality, and cooperation. If the world wants peace, it must stop rewarding aggression. If the world wants stability, it must stop enabling expansionism. If the world believes in international law, it must enforce it consistently and without double standards. And if the nations of this region seek a future free from perpetual war, they must recognize this fundamental truth. Palestine is not merely a cause for solidarity, it is the indispensable cornerstone of regional security. Thank you. Okay, I finished reading the speech delivered by Iran's Foreign Minister, Abbas Araghchi. Those were his words, but they echo my own. Remember, the last time that I addressed this topic, all my ability to communicate with you, the outside world, via commentary, and my ability to respond thereunto, your commentary and my replies, was cut off, permanently disabled. We don't know if my channel will survive tonight. Now, Melissa Mayao says, your art is so complex from every corner. I wonder how many actually understand the message. Goddess bless you, honey. I love you. Okay, here we are. Let me respond to this, dear lady, before continuing on with the night. And, okay. Beloved at Melissa. There we are. Okay. And let me make certain to give her the proper emoji. Here we are. Perfect for it. There we go. Now, citing the disastrous precedents in Afghanistan and Iraq a few days ago, obviously Iran and, Afghanistan and Iraq, they feel like yesterday to me, but they were a few years ago by now. And citing the disastrous precedents thereof a few days ago, on the eve of the breakdown of negotiations and the start of the war, Karim Sajadpour. Well, Karim Sajadpour is a policy analyst at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. And he noted, the last 2 decades have proven that we don't have the ability to dictate who comes to power the day after a military attack. So as he stood at the lectern in his white USA cap and announced the launch of a massive and ongoing military operation against Iran, Donald Trump said, "We're going to destroy their missiles and raise their missile industry to the ground. It will be totally, again, obliterated." He had to say, again, because he has insisted over and over that Iran's nuclear facilities have already been utterly obliterated last summer after Operation Midnight Hammer. But the objective of these latest midnight, or should we say very early morning strikes, conducted again by Israeli forces and their American levy working together, is already far broader than the wiping out of weapons of mass destruction, whether that be uranium enrichment sites or Iran's ballistic missile capabilities. A series of loud explosions has been heard in cities and at sites across Iran. Smoke was seen rising from the presidential compound and Iran's National Security Council. Israeli forces and their American levies have also attacked various camps in western Iran and a known Hezbollah site south of Baghdad in Iraq. In reply, Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps announced on Telegram that it has launched a wave of retaliatory strikes. In Israel itself and the various Gulf states, people have been rushed to shelter. Crucially, Trump told the Iranian leadership, its military, and its police forces to surrender via the manipulation of their own masses. To quote Donald Trump himself, "Lay down your arms, or you will face certain death. Our objective is to defend the American people by eliminating imminent threats from the Iranian regime, a vicious group of very hard, terrible people. We cannot take it anymore. For too long, they have threatened us, our allies, and the entire world with their nuclear ambitions and their missiles. To the great, proud people of Iran, I say tonight that the hour of your freedom is at hand. When we are finished, take over your government. It will be yours to take. This will be probably your only chance for generations. For many years you asked for America's help, but you never got it. No president was willing to do what I am willing to do tonight. Now you have a president who is giving you what you want, so let's see how you respond. America is backing you with overwhelming strength and devastating force. Now is the time to seize control of your destiny and unleash the prosperous and glorious future that is close within your reach. This is the moment for action. Do not let it pass." This is a regime change war by proxy, then, and the most dangerous foreign policy operation Trump has ever conducted. Instead of American boots on the ground, the apartheid state of Israel and its American imperial subject state hope to knock out the Iranian leadership so that anti-regimist forces inside Iran can take over. Of course, while Trump can control what the United States military does, the American empire cannot direct, let alone conduct, a popular revolution in Iran. Airstrikes may kill large numbers of Iranian senior commanders. Experts agree that the Iranian regime has been weakened in recent months by intensified sanctions and recent protests. But nobody can say whether the Ayatollah Khamenei's brutal government will collapse following these strikes, and if it does, whether the regime's collapse will lead to a flowering of freedom in Iran or a long and bloody civil war similar to the one that nearby Syria has experienced, which was a boon to Islamic terrorist groups and the cause of another huge migratory wave into the West, the very phenomenon Trump and his red Eurosurgeons were voted in to cancel and preempt. In his speech, Trump spraketh of Iran's long history of anti-American violence, going back to the embassy hostage crisis in 1979 and the bombing of American Marines by Iran's proxies in Beirut in 1983. He's most certainly not wrong to talk about all the evil the Iranian regime has done in the past. But Iran's present and future is what matters now, and the question is whether Israel and ZOGA, Z-O-G-A, the Zionist occupation-governed America, can remote control a revolution on the ground through bombs from the air. Trump called for Iran's 93 million people to rise up in popular resistance and form a new government. It is an audacious gambit, undertaken in compliance to the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of white settler regime Israel. That has no clear outcome. For a man who hungers for the Nobel Peace Prize, this war of choice borders on delusion. Netanyahu is exploiting Trump's vanity to stay out of jail, and Trump himself has no plan for the Iranian people. The mere act of bombing Iran will not by itself spontaneously generate a stable regime. Noting that there is no modern precedent for forcing regime change by air power alone, the Americans took their airstrikes against the Empire of Japan to the nuclear level, and Japan still has an emperor. Ali Vaez, who heads the Iran project at the International Crisis Group, has gone on the record to say, "The idea in Washington and Tel Aviv that bombing Iran will somehow trigger a popular uprising is not strategy, it's wishful thinking. Bombs can degrade infrastructure, they can weaken capabilities, but they do not manufacture organized political alternatives." The greater Israeli and Zio-American levy operations have reportedly targeted Iran's leadership, including the supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, and struck at least 9 cities, from the northern mountains to the southern desert and a port on the Persian Gulf. According to multiple news outlets, Israeli officials have concluded that Khamenei has been eliminated. His life's work was to perpetuate a revolution that is heading for the ash heap. The war itself, dubbed Operation Roaring Lion by Israel and Epic Fury by their client United States, has escalated quickly, sucking in 7 other countries, as Iran responded by firing on Israeli and American interests in Saudi Arabia, Iraq, the Kingdom of Jordan, the United Arab Emirates, Qatar, Bahrain, and Kuwait. Countries such as Saudi Arabia once wondered whether Tehran could be appeased and contained. Now they do not. Iran has gone to war against the Arabs, and American officials have since indicated that the war is likely to continue for days, even weeks, emphasizing that there are very good reasons why the United States has a constitutional structure on matters of war and peace. The never-Trump conservative New York Times columnist David French, in his column published today, as dated March 1st, argues that Trump is courting a global disaster by starting a war unilaterally while failing to get Congress's input. To quote us the Frenchman at length and verbatim, again I'll be reading for the next few minutes. When it came to military affairs, the Constitution separated the power to declare war from the power to command the military. The short way of describing the structure is that America should go to war only at Congress's direction, but when it does, its armies are commanded by the president. Perhaps the most important aspect of this constitutional structure is that it creates a presumption of peace. Our nation cannot go to war until its leaders persuade a majority of Congress that war is in our national interest. The Iranian regime deserves to fall, but I'm concerned that we're creating the conditions for more massacres of more civilians without offering the protesters any reasonable prospect of success. No matter what he thinks, Trump is not a king, but by taking America to war all on his own, he is acting like one. 8 minutes! That's the length of President Trump's social media video announcing his war with Iran. He didn't go to Congress. He didn't obtain a UN Security Council resolution. Instead, he did perhaps the most monarchical thing he's done in a monarchical second term. He simply ordered America into war. I take a back seat to no one in my loathing of the Iranian regime. I am not mourning the death of Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, who was killed in an airstrike on Saturday, February 28th. But my personal feelings don't override the Constitution, and neither do anyone else's. Here's the bottom line. Trump should have gotten congressional approval for striking Iran, or he should not have struck at all. And because he did not obtain congressional approval, he's diminishing America's chances for ultimate success and increasing the chances that we make the same mistakes we and other powerful nations have made before. Now, Trump himself has openly acknowledged that there will be American casualties as this conflict unfolds, with the United States military CENTCOM, that's CENTCOM, an abbreviate for Central Command, today confirming that 3 service members have been killed in the Iran operation, while 5 were seriously injured as part of Operation Epic Fury. Its own update reading, several others sustained minor shrapnel injuries and concussions, and are in the process of being returned to duty. Major combat operations continue, and our response effort is ongoing. In a video posted on Truth Social, President Trump said, "There will likely be more United States service members killed in the Iran conflict before it ends." Recent polls have shown that Trump does not have broad support for this war, which arrives at a time when Americans are focused most on their own economic woes. Trump is courting fiasco in escalating conflict, but it's Trump's attacks on America itself that will decimate us all before the end of 2026. What if Donald Trump had gotten out of the box and had at least given the appearance of governing more moderately his second time around the White House block last year? I've been giving this some thought on the rare occasions I can quiet my active mind and find the clear air needed to grapple with truly terrifying what-ifs during this ongoing American tragedy. I was spurred to consider such by Margot Howard, who has spent her life in print and penned the popular Dear Prudence column for Slate magazine for many years. She is the daughter of Ann Landers, the renowned syndicate advice columnist. Margot is herself wise, direct, and one of those special people who can see straight through the fog. In the aftermath of Trump's never-ending State of the Union, she dispatched this rocket, which I shall quote. Not that he listens to White House Chief of Staff Susie Wiles or anyone, but had he spoken for 25 minutes, only upbeat stuff, and brought out the Olympians, he could have turned everything around. I winced knowingly myself on reading that. It's a perceptive take, as always, and spurs me to dig deeper into similar dark thoughts I have had on this very subject. So here goes. In the days after a second lethal November blast in an 8-year span that has rocked our senses and our empire, I wondered about 2 things specifically. Point: how would the despicable Trump deal with power the second time around? Point: how would Democrats react to this terrible event? We got the answer to the second question first, and it was appalling and unforgivable. Somehow, Democrats seemed to be caught flat-footed by Trump's win and came off as pathetic weaklings almost resigned to their fate. They were ripe for surrender and dutifully waved white flags. My God, within weeks, the outgoing Democratic president warmed Trump's fat ass by a crackling fire at the White House while literally welcoming him back. The uninspiring national Democratic leadership that couldn't even provide a presidential candidate for us to vote for until it was all but too late dusted themselves off and seemed only too satisfied to reassume their places at the kiddie table, where the Republicans threw them scraps and picked away at what was left of their self-respect. Instead of pushing back with vigor, they acquiesced and melted into the background. This did not go well with the folks on the battlefield who had broke their asses working to get Democrats elected only to be abandoned by them in the minute all the trouble arrived. Our democracy was officially put on the clock, and the opposition party hit the snooze button before turning off the alarm. By the way, Melissa Mayo says the continued demonization of the Iranian people is an obvious sign of the importance of their land and the deeper understanding of the entities that reside there and the powers that be want to resurrect. Thank you very much. Very astute. Here we are. Profoundly astute. Let me respond to it. Profoundly astute. Astute insight. There we are. Okay. My dear. Now let's, okay. And let me make sure to get her the right emoji, something that will do justice to this lovely young lady. And so here we are. Okay. There we go. Now, let me tell you what my real fear was during that pitch black time after Trump resumed office, when it was hard to see a way out. Trump would actually take some prudent advice and get out of the box slowly, instead of like a jack-in-the-box on a spring. He would at least give the appearance that he was taking a measured approach to governing and would thoughtfully deal with the issues that concern the majority of all Americans, like the economy. What if in the wake of that gruesome election, Trump somehow found it deep inside himself to act like a semi-decent person who really cares about this country? Before proceeding, I want to be very careful here because I like to think I know you almost as well as I know myself. Please notice my emphasis on the word act, because I know you know how despicable Trump really is. I know you know all about the terrible things he has done and what he will most certainly try to do with the rest of his miserable life. And us! And I mean U.S. in the sense of the collective us and in the aggregate of the United States, as in U.S. In short, there is nothing he can do to redeem himself in our eyes. We will celebrate when he is gone, because we know the world will be a better, safer place with his absence. Unfortunately, we are but an ardent, clear-eyed voting bloc. Like it or not, we aren't the majority of the people in this country, or it turns out like too damn many cowards in the party we vote for. As we have tragically learned by now, roughly 40% of the American electorate will stand with the orange racist maniac no matter what. There isn't a thing he can do, including shooting one of them in the middle of the street, that will change their stubborn, angry minds about following this soulless monster off a cliff while trying to drag the rest of us with them. Then there are the people in the middle of the political spectrum, who can go either way with Trump, and yes, I have concluded that these people actually exist. They are persuadable. How that can actually be, given that they are standing in hell up to their knees right now, I don't know, but they are out there just as sure as I am hosting this transmission. Finally, there are tens of millions more who simply don't give a good goddamn and rarely bother to vote at all. Who even knows what they will do, or worse, what they could possibly be thinking? Regular reviewers will know I reserve most of my heat for them. How dare they? Well, as we all painfully know by now, Trump did not move slowly and prudently, and wasted no time proving just how despicable he truly is by implementing the Project 2025 playbook he lied he knew nothing about on the campaign trail. He moved to hurt as many people as he could just as fast as possible. He went full authoritarian, set fire to our government, and demolished our White House. He introduced ridiculous, harmful tariffs and mustered troops into our streets. He blew up global alliances and threatened war with NATO itself over Greenland. He did nothing about our rising prices and all he could to strip us of our health insurance, making everyday life just as miserable as possible. He actually seemed to go out of his way to prove just how horrible he really is, as if so many of us weren't already convinced. That's when people decided that they, not some political party, were best equipped to handle this. So we hit the streets and marched by the millions. We protested and by God we voted. Democrats won every single election of consequence last year and have hit the ground running again in elections this year. Trump kicked the hornet's nest and is as unpopular as he's ever been in his short-lived political life. His approvals are hanging at about 40% nationally. In the battleground state of Wisconsin, a recent poll has his net approval rating at -10. 10 degrees below zero, matching the worst numbers of his disastrous first midterm. He is failing miserably while doing what he has always done better than anybody, going lower. He is a sicko, bent upon revenge, while filling his bottomless pockets with all our money. I believe Republicans are going to suffer a historic flaying in November. They have nothing to run on and are too damn scared to run away from this orange, swollen-ankled monster who has them by their skinny little necks. As bad as things are, this is actually the best case scenario for Democrats. Because mark my words, if Trump had proceeded slowly yesteryear and worked incrementally and quietly toward destroying America, instead of taking a sledgehammer thereunto, his approvals would be at or around 50% right now, and Republicans would be in decent shape heading into the midterms. According to the Cook Political Report, Trump is underwater with women by almost 30 points. This is a group he lost by only 7 points in 2024. White voters without college degrees, meaning uneducated, stupid white people, his strongest group, have dropped 23 points in their support of a man who is doing nothing for them other than providing a weekly booster shot of racism. Had he been capable of showing just a shred of humility, it really wouldn't have been that hard to steal it all forever. Just as we simply have to know by now, there are just too many idiots in this country who would have gladly handed him the keys to the kingdom. Tens of millions more just don't give a damn either way. It's really sad when you can't trust your own empire to do the right thing. We have been exposed, and I am just not sure we will ever be safe and sound again. Trump could have had it all, but he wanted it all too damn quick. And for now, at least, a majority of America is finally onto him. Instead of giving the State of the Union speech Margot suggested, he pontificated, spit and raged for close to 2 hours. While making things harder on Americans, he's only made his attempted authoritarian takeover harder on himself. There will be all the more spitting and raging as we move toward November's elections. In the past 48 hours, there have been reports he will try to gin up national emergencies to stop or take over our vote. As we know, he's fully capable of anything, and we will have to be ready for that. I believe we will be, because as bad as things are right now, they could have been much worse. Now, our dear Sammy says in the chat, You are so right. I have family, so-called Christian members, that are that blind and ignorant of Donnie. We are truly witnessing the Antichrist, as you pointed out not so long ago, about Donnie. Actually, I pointed that out long ago, but thank you. Yes, and you are so right, Sammy. Thank you so very much. Irregardless, now that the United States Supreme Court has struck down President Donald Trump's sweeping global tariffs, the fallout for the American economy from Trump's tariff debacle leaves American imperial economic policy rudderless. Point. The Supreme Court's 6-3 ruling last Friday invalidates the tariffs Trump had imposed under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, which accounted for more than 60% of his tariff revenue. It also eliminates the negotiating leverage that extracted more than $1.5 trillion in investment commitments from American imperial trading partners. The question now facing these partners, all those partners, is stark. Why honor agreements negotiated under the threat of what the Supreme Court has deemed illegal tariffs? The ruling destroys the weapon that defined Trump's trade strategy against the world, namely the ability to impose, adjust, or remove tariffs instantly and unpredictably. Point: 3 major trade agreements with the Empire of Japan, South Korea, and the European Union, and the hundreds of billions of dollars in investment in the United States that was promised as part of those deals, were all push-buttoned into pause. Point, and always broached in the reactive, there be emergent questions about the very legality of Israel's American-fought war, violating international laws, the United Nations Charter, and the United States Constitution, as it so unconscionably does. The founding document of the United Nations stipulates that its members shall refrain in their international relations from the threat or use of force against the territorial integrity or political independence of any state. And the United States Constitution says that only Congress has the power to declare war. In a statement on Saturday, the Arms Control Association said that American lawmakers and other countries around the world have a solemn moral and legal duty to oppose this rogue aggression. The American people were under no imminent threat from Iran. Its government does not have, in any way, shape, or form, nuclear weapons. It was no more threatening to Israel than any other American imperial ally than it normally is. I mean to say, it was no more threatening to Israel or any other American imperial ally than it normally is, which is pretty much, shall we say, non-threatening to the point of lame. The decision yesterday morning to attack Tehran, the capital, has nothing to do with freedom for Iran, as Donald Trump told the Washington Post. He's not going to raise their missile industry to the ground, nor annihilate their navy. Why? Because that's not the point. The point is creating a made-for-TV war that makes Trump look like a big, tough war president. He's doing this for transparently obvious reasons. Things are going badly, very badly, for him at home. Freedoms are being violated. The middle class is being immiserated. There's a general sense that the rich and the powerful, the Epstein class, can act with impunity while everyone else pays the price. If Trump doesn't change the subject, his presidency, and perhaps more than his presidency, will cease to be as it is once the Congress is turned over to the Democrats. Trump believes Americans will rally around the presidency in a time of war, thus boosting his poll numbers among people who only pay attention to the news when there's a war going on. This is not an Iran-Israeli war. This is not an Iran-American war. Those titles give this moment too much dignity. This is little more than a political stunt, with the only real consequences being mass-murdered Iranians. As such, it has to be as brief as it is spectacular to watch on Fox News. There can't be any American casualties. Anyway, not so many that it looks bad on video screens. Trump is making titanic declarations to suggest that he has an indomitable will to achieve objectives at any cost. Trump telling the Post this morning, "All I want is freedom for the people. I want a safe nation, and that's what we're gonna have." But again, that's just part of the performance. As soon as something goes sideways, and it will go sideways, given enough time, Donald Trump will chicken out. Trump always chickens out. That's where we get the acronym TACO. Taco. Trump is the taco president. That's why he will end it quickly, to prevent what is so far a carefully managed political stunt from blowing up in his orange face. He will accept any convenient reason to declare victory over Iran, even if victory falls short of, quote, "a safe nation, and that's what we're going to have," unquote, as so demonstrably obviated by today's Austin, Texas, Buford's Bar massacre. I will ultimately defer to the ethno-Persian authorities on Middle Eastern politics, but from where I'm standing, Trump today ended the democratic spirit that was rising up from the Iranian people. Iran's government has been crushing dissent for months. Trump is acting like he's enabling regime change as if he were the great liberator. In reality, he's justified more repression by an already repressive government. More than that, he's mass undermining all dissidents. Who's going to be seen, who's going to want to be seen as American allies after the United States bombed an all-girls primary school, killing 168 children under Israeli-issued orders, in the gravest violation of humanitarian law imaginable. These strikes have opened a stunning new chapter in Israeli-directed American imperial intervention, with Iran State TV reporting over 200 killed in Israeli-guided American strikes. The overwhelming majority of the victims are innocent little girls. Indeed, Iran's mulacracy benefits twice. Not only can it justify ever more and ever more violent crackdowns on individual liberty in the name of national security, it can also defeat the Great Satan with an all-provincial lucky punch. Again, this is a made-for-TV war. Trump does not have the will to do what it takes to liberate Iran. That would require a generation-defining occupation of the kind that George W. Bush attempted in Iraq in the 2000s. All Iran has to do is bloody Trump's orange nose, bomb a base, sink a ship, humiliate the Titan so that his titanic declarations seem farcical. They can then declare victory, then go back to repressing their own people. Because the point of all this is looking good on TV, Trump has overlooked the fact that he's not in complete control. As someone wiser even than myself once said, the enemy gets a vote too. Benjamin Netanyahu is clearly but pretending to act as an ally, as if his top priority is Israel's and America's safety and security. In reality, what he needs is a perpetual state of emergency to stay in power, to prevent himself from being prosecuted and imprisoned for life. As such, he's happy to provide cover to Trump's stunt, as attacking Iran seems more justifiable in America if seen as defending its masterclass in Israel. But Netanyahu's credibility in America is now deeply strained, to put it mildly, by the fact that he genocided tens of thousands of Palestinians. He'll be all right if the Democrats in the Congress play along with him and Trump. What happens if they don't? Whether the Democrats do play along will be determined by how far they are willing to go in accepting Trump's lies. If they accept that Iran posed such a threat to Israel and Zionized America by way of possessing nuclear weapons, and ergo, Netanyahu and his Trump puppet were justified in triggering a conflict that could engulf the world, there is no reason the Democrats should accept those lies, given that Trump has already said on record that Iran's nuclear sites were obliterated. If the Democrats decide against playing along, we might expect them to lump the president's new illegal war with all other high crimes committed against the Constitution and the American people, so that a made-for-TV war intended to boost his standing with the voters before the midterms becomes just another liability. Not only for himself, but for Netanyahu too. I can assure you that but for the faith of the Democrats, Netanyahu would be in jail. His war crimes have put a wedge between the Democrats and the all-powerful Israel lobby. That wedge could become as permanent as Democratic elites slowly come around to accepting the idea that Joe Biden's position on the Gaza cost Kamala Harris precious votes. Moreover, Gallup found for the first time in a quarter of a century that more Americans, not just Democrats, sympathize with the Palestinians more than they sympathize with the Israelis. Whatever the American consensus on Israel used to be, it clearly no longer is. The more Netanyahu exploits Trump's vanity to stay out of jail himself, the wider that gap will get, to Netanyahu's own detriment in the bitter end time. This war on Iran need not even have ever happened, at least not now, as was the case in the run-up to the 12-day war in June, when Israel and its United States bombed Iran's nuclear sites in Fordow, Natanz, and Esfahan. The Trump maladministration has been in the midst of diplomatic negotiations with the Islamic Republic. They were due to hold further talks among their respective nuclear experts early next week. Once again, diplomacy has been aborted in favor of violence. Just hours before the war erupted, the Omani foreign minister, Badr al-Busaidi, who has been the intermediary in the negotiations, reported that substantial progress had been made toward a lasting and verifiable deal, himself so telling CBS's Face the Nation, "Really, I can see that the peace deal is within our reach." This is also a war that could have been avoided if Trump had not abandoned the hard-won nuclear deal known as the JCPOA, or Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. Back in 2018, during his first midterm, which had taken 20 years of intense negotiations by the Obama misadministration. Trump's subsequent campaign of maximum pressure, including the imposition of 1,500 new economic sanctions on Iran and its business partners, led Tehran to respond with its own maximum pressure, it escalated the enrichment of uranium, the fuel that can be used for a nuclear weapon and for nuclear energy, to far higher than the limits set under the JCPOA, and created more advanced centrifuges to do just that. On Saturday, the Senator Tim Kaine of Virginia, a member of the Armed Services Committee, said, "Has President Trump learned nothing from decades of U.S. meddling in Iran and forever wars in the Middle East? Is he too mentally incapacitated to realize that we had a diplomatic agreement with Iran that was keeping its nuclear program in check until he ripped it up during his first term?" Trump recently claimed that a new nuclear deal could be reached if Iran only said the magic words, that it would not produce a nuclear weapon. Iran has used those magic words several times in recent years, including this past week. On Tuesday, the aforecited Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi, whose speech I read earlier in transmission, posted on X, "Our fundamental convictions are crystal clear. Iran will under no circumstances ever develop a nuclear weapon. Neither will we Iranians ever forego our right to harness the dividends of peaceful nuclear technology for our people. Under the terms of the Non-Proliferation Treaty, which went into effect in 1970, Iran has the right to produce nuclear energy for peaceful purposes." Like the war on Iraq, launched by the George W. Bush administration, I should say its maladministration, in 2003, today's war on Iran is based on a lie about weapons of mass destruction. This week, President Trump claimed that Tehran posed imminent threats to American soil. Washington is rightly concerned about Iran's ballistic missiles, many hidden underground in so-called missile cities. Their longest range is 12,000 kilometers, far enough to hit Israel and United States personnel or facilities across the Middle East. That is indeed deeply worrisome. But Iran has no ability to hit anywhere close to these United States. Alan Iyer, a longtime Iran watcher at the State Department, now at the Middle East Institute in Washington, has told the Fourth Estate that Trump's stated objective for these attacks, imminent threat, is not believable, and his real objective, regime incapacitation, if not regime change, is unlikely. Himself emphasizing that Operation Epic Fury may not be able to destroy by air, in his words, the myriad interlinked institutions and infrastructures that constitute the basis of regime power. Even if that were to happen, it is even more unlikely there would be a spontaneous generation of new organic institutions that would underpin a viable alternative government. What is more likely once the guns stop is a degraded regime and an increasingly immiserated Iranian populace. Iyer has concluded that there's no guarantee that the United States military can stifle an Iranian response, which will only destabilize the region. The war has thus triggered global alarm. The United Nations scheduled an emergency meeting for Saturday afternoon, long-standing American imperial allies calling for an end to the arrow campaign. On X, the French president, Emmanuel Macron, wrote that the outbreak of war between the United States, Israel, and Iran carries grave consequences for international peace and security. The Spanish Prime Minister, Pedro Sánchez, said, "We cannot afford another prolonged and devastating war in the Middle East." The Swiss government called for full respect for international law. In a joint statement, the top 12 leaders of the European Union urged against any actions that could further escalate tensions or undermine the global non-proliferation regime. At home, Many Democratic leaders and at least 12 Republicans challenged Trump's decision, or right, to go to war. In a post on X, the representative Thomas Massie, a Republican from Kentucky, said, "This is not America first." The Senator Rand Paul, another Kentucky Republican, quoted James Madison, a founding father and the fourth president of these United States, who said that the executive branch was most prone to war, which is why declaring it is a right reserved for Congress alone. Others noted Iranian support for extremist movements, including Hezbollah, Hamas, and the Houthis, that have killed hundreds of Americans in the past 4 decades, and the tens of thousands of Iranians the regime has killed in recent mass protests. As the Senator Jeanne Shaheen of New Hampshire, the ranking member of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, has so noted, no one will be sad to see them go. But she qualified that Trump has shown a disappointingly cavalier approach towards the use of force, even when it risks the lives of the tens of thousands of U.S. service members and diplomats in the region, as well as our allies and partners, who are already under attack. The president has still not outlined the American imperial exit strategy. Will it be after a hypothetical uprising has held elections and formed a new government? The Bush maladministration tried that in Afghanistan in 2001 and in Iraq in 2003, and was stuck in each country for years, at the cost of thousands of American lives and trillions of dollars. Senator Andy Kim of New Jersey called Trump's decision foolish for putting Americans in harm's way without any imminent threat and putting Iranian dissidents in danger without a coalition to protect them. Trump has talked about both a limited mission against Iran and, overnight, a massive operation. The specifics of his calculations remain unclear to other elected officials as well as to the rest of us. Speaking of other elected officials, why does Trump love Zoran so fucking much? Mayor Zoran Mamdani met Trump in the Oval Office on Thursday to pitch an enormous new New York City housing initiative and secure the release of a Columbia University student from ICE custody. Mamdani's communications director said that Trump was very enthusiastic about the plan to build 12,000 new affordable homes in Sunnyside, Queens, by using over $21 billion United States dollars in federal grants. What's more, the student, who happens to be a photogenic young woman, was freed. Results all around. Zoran and his team gave Trump a prop newspaper, literally printed out a false newspaper to stroke this fucker's ego, with a headline, "Trump to City, Let's Build," a play on the 1975 New York Daily News cover, "Ford to City, Drop Dead." The headlines made a clear case for how much the people would love Trump if he went ahead with Mamdani's plans. Holding both newspapers, Trump beamed like a juvenile on school picture day. Mamdani stood behind him, a proud sales associate, with his hands clasped demurely. The reactions on the left since the meeting have focused on Mamdani's ability to manipulate Trump, while those on the right point out the similarities between left-wing socialism and right-wing nationalism, after mentioning the strong ideological overlap between the two systems of thought on X. One DC restaurateur wrote, "Zoran eats free at Butterworth's. Come through." The deeper truth is that both men are sleazy New York hucksters. It is in Trump's DNA to love flim-flam men with wide smiles who know how to make New York City happy. What sealed the deal was Zoran's demonstrating how he imagines their stars will rise together. Next on the soccer-mad mayor's agenda with Trump, cheaper World Cup tickets. Across the Atlantic, whether it is the traditional trois-party system or the institution of monarchy, hardly a day goes by without the established order of things being challenged. As preparations are underway for a historic royal visit to Washington, could this be the riskiest royal visit in history? Happening amidst the fallout from Andrew Mountbatten Windsor's arrest, the divisions of Trump's America, and the threat of a brutal Times Square advertising campaign directed at the king should he go at all, the jeopardy is mounting. A moment of diplomacy could turn into an uncomfortable confrontation over power and accountability. Trump's puppet master Putin he may end his war in 1 week now because time and money. The Russians have neither. The low funds and low recruitment of fresh troops are significant issues, along with the lack of Starlink. The boys from Moscow are facing problems, and it's only getting worse. Putin's buddies from BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, are starting to give him the cold shoulder. Putin could be starting to get the message and realizing that it's over. He could have figured it out back in 2022 after his forces stalled. He could have seen it coming in 2023 when nothing significant occurred for his armies. Possibly in 2024 when nothing happened for another year, and maybe in 2025. Hey, it's 2026 and Vladimir Putin maybe, finally, if ever, is smelling the coffee. The numerical superiority is only still in pure manpower. Everything else they are losing. Russia focuses on bombing the population while Ukraine targets the oil refinery and production. And again, I see lessons that could have been learned from the Second World War. Mein Vater, Adolf Hitler, focused on will-breaking London while the Allies, mainly, bombed every production site they could identify into oblivion. And logistics is one. In the end, someone needs to pay for all of this. I fear that Ukraine will bleed a lot more, but they've secured funding for the coming 20 years. Russia's main source of income is oil and gas, and that's not going really well. Or not really going well, despite the rise in prices from the Iran conflict. Gas is slowly but surely being closed off to the West, and there is no infrastructure to send it east. So everything produced in the west of Russia that was meant to be exported to Europe is fucking useless. They can liquefy it, but nothing close to the numbers they were exporting pre-war. They still export oil, but whereas the price in 2022 even topped $100, rumors say that Red China is now buying it at $35 a barrel, which is less than cost price, at $45 in production. With Trump wanting to get the regular price to $50, the future looks grim for Russia. Interest therein is still at 15%. For banks, way worse for consumers. Mortgages up to 36%. Exports to the West are decimated. Putin's shadow fleets are under attack. Allies like Venezuela and Suraya are gone. Iran is in trouble, though I fear they will persevere under Trump's incompetence. All with Hong Zhonghua, Red China, slowly but surely picking the cherries, but demanding a price for everything. I would not want to be in the Kremlin through the coming year. Russia's economy is going rapidly down the tubes. The black market ruble is currently well over 500 to the dollar and 600 to the euro. There is no foreign investment. Russia is a one-trick pony, with its oil exports being its major money maker to support the war. The oil trade is down. India is switching away from Russian oil, and Europe is finally cracking down on Russia's shadow fleet of tankers. It does not look good for Putin. In all likelihood, the Russian economy will enter a stagflation depression in late 2026 or very early 2027. At that point, Putin will be deposed. Then a new Russian government will seek to cut its losses and get out of the Russo-Ukrainian war any way they can and as quickly as they can. The only way any new Russian government can quickly attain credibility is to get the hell out of the Ukraine. By now, many analysts have finally concluded that Russia is going to collapse due to their invasion of the Ukraine, analogously to how the Greater Soviet Union collapsed due to their invasion of Afghanistan. Some put the collapse at around 2026. The Russian economy was not that large to start with, and the costs associated with waging their war are staggering. Thus, the Russian economy was strained to its breaking point yesteryear. Even the switch to a wartime economy was not enough to keep up with the demands. Everyone is losing in a war as the war is fought. Russia is losing hugely, as Trump would say. It basically cost Russia its economy, as well as hundreds of thousands of dead and maimed, to fight the war in Ukraine. Russia's current result? They are still 20 kilometers from Donetsk that Russia occupied in 2014, fighting for another town, which Russians are slowly but surely demolishing into ruins. Donetsk and Luhansk are now surrounded by a belt of wasteland, with dead bodies desiccating in the basements of bombed buildings. Is it a loss for Ukraine? Enormously so. The Ukraine treasures every town, every person. Is it a win for Russia? No, it's not. Russia will never be able to own these lands officially. It has control, but it will never be Russia on world maps. And Russia has lost so much more than it has gained. Russia's inflation was 35% 2.5 years ago, the last time they released such data, when the National Wealth Fund was already empty. No money to pay soldiers, Soviets' weapons stockpiles finished, by then 1 million killed or maimed for life, and after the Ukraine began striking deep into the Russian territory, the people, even in Siberia, were getting worried that the war would come to their own homes. Over a year on in since that data dump, nothing is going to Putin's plan any better. Russia failed to take Kiev and was defeated at Kherson, Mykolaiv, Zaporozhye, Chernihiv, or Chernihiv in the Ukrainian, Sumy, and Kharkiv. And as for the other city, Mykolaiv in the Ukrainian, as opposed to the Russian dialect. And Russia lost at least another 200,000 KIA killed in action, and another 200,000, 20,000 combat vehicles. At least 9 more Russian generals have been killed. The bottomless Soviet-era stockpiles of weapons are exhausted, and now Russia has to beg Iran and North Korea for munitions and missiles. Russia had to announce mobilization for the first time since World War II. The Black Sea Fleet was decimated by a nation without a navy, taking to sea on their sailboards, as rendered most obvious by the unconditional surrender of Russia's prize flagship, the Moskva. Russia expended 10,000 missiles and failed to destroy Ukraine's power grid, which Putin himself admitted was the entire objective. Russia's oil industry is being dealt crippling blows by in-depth Ukrainian strikes. Multiple oil depots and ammo depots have been literally obliterated. Entering its 5th year of total war, Russia couldn't occupy a single regional city. 3 regional cities were occupied by Russia in 2014. The Ukraine still controls 80% of its territory. Missiles can now reach Putin's residence in Valdai, between St. Petersburg and Moscow, even faster. The Ukraine has acquired advanced Western weapons and aero defense systems that far exceed the Russian analogs. Russia has lost the lucrative European gas market and is losing oil markets worldwide. Nearly 1 million young, educated Russians have mass emigrated. The Ukraine invaded the Kursk region of Russia a year and a half ago, and Russia is unable to squeeze them out, despite bringing in North Korean troops for help. Russia has lost its bases in Suraya, being unable to save their puppet regime of Bashar al-Assad. Russian troops were driven out of Nagorno-Karabakh by Azerbaijan. The Russian economy is in deep trouble due to sanctions and overheating, resultant the militarization of all productive capacities and industries in total. Russia's base interest rate by central banking is at 21%. Home loans are at 30%. Consumer loans at 40 to 50%. Russia's reliance on Red China has increased astronomically. The Ukraine's international weight has only skyrocketed. Russia's military potential will take generations to restore. After nearly 3 years of total war, well, 4, 5, we're entering the 5th year. Russia is still stuck in Donbass. Finally, NATO added 1,300 kilometers on Russia's border after Finland and Sweden joined the alliance. Finland's military is nearly four times the size of Ukraine's. If Russia invaded Finland in 3 weeks, Russia would be part of Finland's territory. Russia would invade, NATO would call and say, "Do you need us?" Finland would say, "No, it's fine. We don't even need all of us." Crush the Russian forces and march on Moscow like the Canadians did onto the White House when they burned it down in 1814. Russia has spent years failing to defeat an unprepared enemy. They haven't got a chance against one that's been ready since 1950. Things are not going well for Vlad Putin. Not going well at all. Putin has engaged in dangerous brinkmanship repeatedly over decades, and it is surprising he survived as long as he has. Threatening multiple nations and regular invasions have brought him dangerously close to disaster many times. To be precise, 2008, Russia attacked Georgia. 2014, Russia attacked the Crimea. 2015, Russia attacked Syria. 2022, Russia attacked the Ukraine. Putin now survives by luck alone, since there are so many both inside and outside Russia who want to see him gone. His presidency is the result of his KGB, FSB background, and use of, frankly, the Judeo-Bolshevik playbook. Blame imagined enemies for imagined mistreatment of Russians everywhere and elsewhere. Use that as an excuse to attack, and if the victim refuses to give up, attack again and again. The objective is to be more powerful than his predecessors, to expand indefinitely, to bring back the empire of the Tsars. Arguably, the more threatening he becomes, the weaker he is, there being only so many times one can threaten nuclear war before others realize he is bluffing, or actually call his bluff. The 11 years spent attacking Ukraine, from 2014 through to 2025, thus far, is a breathtaking overextension, which has cost more than 1 million men, most of his armored forces, a significant part of his air arm, the crippling of the Black Sea Fleet, and, worse than any of that, the trashing of the already very small Russian economy. I should actually qualify it as minuscule. Now it seems there'll be no way out, no easy way off the escalator of war spending, fighting, and decline. Putin has had many people murdered, and now he himself fears the same. Many have predicted the collapse of the Russian economy sometime in 2026, and Putin's machinations with self-evidently collaborationist American negotiators don't look like any way out. Russia is the loser here, and it's just the start of Russia's losses. Putin is a fool. He will lose everything. Ergo, Russia is expected to experience any combination of the following: defenestration of Putin himself, movement of the goalposts from wiping Ukraine from the map to teach a lesson, make an example of what happens when a Putin puppet government is rejected. After all, how could Ukraine dare to reject a Putin puppet government when the Americans accepted one? Or, Russia is expected to do something they already did, or can claim they did, to justify leaving Ukraine while saving face, etc. The conventional wisdom going like this: Russia could carry on the present grinding style of warfare through 2025. The crunch cometh when the present offensive culminates at some point in 2026. No longer able to bear the current rate of loss, Russian forces will be forced on the defensive to hold their gains. Now, Putin has several bad choices. beginning with watching all his gains slip away. The others revolve around a negotiated end, or at least a ceasefire. At this point, the Ukraine and its allies have little incentive to agree. However, this situation presents them with a couple of bad choices. Assuming Putin stays in power, either accept the Russian occupation of some part of Ukraine or go on a costly, grinding offensive to recover lost territory. Here the best hope is that the Russian army in Ukraine will collapse, and/or Putin's government will fall, leaving a successor willing to negotiate a reasonable end to the war, spiraling into the end of Russia as we know it, etc. That having been qualified, a listener asks, obviously a Russian bot or a paid troll in meat format, could Russia defeat Europe without America? More logically, the question is, can NATO, without the United States, defeat Russia in an all-out war? The answer to the latter reframing being, of course, definitively, not even a question, and without any doubt. Guaranteed. NATO realizes that Russia couldn't fight its way out of a wet paper bag. It tried, with all its military might, to invade and beat its badly equipped and untrained neighbor, and couldn't manage even that before we all started supplying them with hardware. If Russia had a competent and capable military, it would have deployed them by now. Russia's Black Sea Fleet got its ass kicked by a country that doesn't even have a navy, for Christ's sakes. How comical is that? The Ukraine is fighting a defensive war and is just about holding on with only but a little help from its erstwhile allies. Other countries in Europe, especially the NATO member states, would not have to defend. They would attack. Within a couple of days, Moscow would be in ruins. All meaningful infrastructure would be destroyed. Communication would be gone. And by day 4, troops would be searching for Putin, who would have run for his life. It's one thing invading a former province, but quite another to attack a country with modern weaponry and very capable air forces and navies. While pro-Russian agitators effectively exercise total control over Western mass media, Russia itself is on the ropes, and the little man in the Kremlin will soon be just another dictator in the history books, while the Russian Federation is set to implode and fragment. It will be decades before Russia becomes trusted or accepted back into the First World, and then only under Raj. There's an international bestseller out there that I'm not going to advertise by giving out its title, what posits a Russian attack on NATO. Although one might quibble with some of the details, what the book's author gets right is that any future war on Europe's eastern frontier will not be about military tactics, but about who will actually join the fight at all. So if only DAWÍKÖ-Dy Deutschland, the new United Germany, sends troops and weapons to fight Russia in the Ukraine as a battlefront, a la Korea or Vietnam, who would win? If only the United Germans dispatched Soldaten and Material de Guerre, literally materials of war, it is military equipment, into the Ukraine as a battlefront to fight the Russians, the Bundeswehr musters around 180,000 Soldaten. The Deutsche Luftwaffe, or the German Air Force, has the Typhoon and Tornado fighters by which to secure total control of full frontal aerospace. Otherwise, the United Germans just don't have the numbers to defeat the Russians outright. They do have the equipment and abilities to deliver a good fight, but are obviously hindered by the fact that they could never send all 180,000 Soldaten into the Ukraine as a battlefront. The United German military is not currently capable and needs help since they have been downsizing since World War III, the so-called Cold War, ended. They would need to go into full war mode and implement conscription to win in the Ukraine as a front. The British armed forces alone are qualitatively far superior to the Ukrainian ones, and their aero power is 20 times greater. If the Russians had a lot of troubles and ultra-heavy losses to gain a few square kilometers of Ukrainian land after years of fierce fights, what chance do they have against the British? The Russian army is a farce. British soldiers go into battle with better technology, better equipment, better weaponry, better training, better tactics, better leadership, simply better everything. Most decisively of all, British aero superiority would be total, because the war in Ukraine has already shown how little the Russian aero forces are worth. I wouldn't say that Putin is scared of the United Kingdom alone. He is scared of the collective West, but he is wary of the United Kingdom. He knows what the United Kingdom's SLBMs, or submarine-launched ballistic missiles, could do to Russia, even without France or the United States of America. The United Kingdom was the first country to promise that it reserved the right to nuke Russia if Russia fires any nukes anywhere in Europe, including the Ukraine. Oh, here's another incoming troll query. Then Russia will just order all of its 63 nuclear submarines to go close to the UK and fire all at once, and the UK would be destroyed. NATO wouldn't risk total nuclear war. They would simply back off. No doubt as this individual wants me to back off. First off, Mother Russia sucker, Russia has a total of 58 submarines, of which only 11 are armed with nuclear weapons. The others are powered by nuclear technology, not armed with nuclear weapons. Now, as for the damage, a 10-kiloton nuclear weapon will have a severe damage area of under a mile, with a light damage area extending out 6 miles. But here is Russia's real problem. The 11 nuclear-armed subs will cease to exist after firing a single weapon, because each one of them has an enemy submarine following it, which will destroy that sub if it fires. So the United Kingdom wouldn't be destroyed. It could have as much as 11 areas where there could be theoretically damage up to 40 miles wide, with severe damage of up to 8 miles wide, depending on the specific kilotonnage of the weapons abused. Such having been qualified, this would not destroy the United Kingdom or anything close. However, NATO has nuclear-armed submarines as well, and more of them than Russia has, as well as submarines that can be armed with nuclear-armed missiles. Guess where they are continually aimed at? The operations and control of the Russian military. If Russia was so incredibly stupid as to fire one single nuclear weapon, the entire might of NATO would crash down upon it. NATO has more nuclear weapons, well maintained, and overall more modern. It triple Fs. Triple fucks, it est, fields, floats, and flies a military 5 times as large as Russia's, except, unlike Russia's, it is all well trained, well maintained, and well supplied. Russia's population and military control is in a far smaller area, almost all west of the Urals Mountains, presenting a much more compacted target space. NATO has a land area 6 times larger, with a far more widely distributed population 10 times as large as Russia's, organically buttressed by redundant areas of military control. Factually, Russia has no possibility of success. They are too weak militarily, too fucking poor, too goddamn small to fight a 3-front war. Here, note that Russia would be facing forces from the west of their empire, from the south of their empire, and from the east of their empire. Russia has never fought a multi-frontal war, and they do not have the manpower or the infrastructure to ever do so. Russia has been warned by NATO that should they go nuclear, or abuse nuclear, chemical, or biological weapons in Ukraine, NATO will consider it to be an act of war against themselves. When Ukraine gave up its 4,000 nuclear weapons, the United Kingdom and the United States of America pledged to defend the Ukraine against Russian NBC, or nuclear, biological, and chemical attack. The United Kingdom is still doing so, even while the USA doesn't, because Putin tells his orange sock puppet that we can't. In the event of a nuclear attack by Russia, it's likely that NATO will fight a conventional war and annihilate the Russian military. Not combat it, annihilate it. If a NATO country is attacked by nuclear weapons, Russia west of the Urals Mountains will be a glowing sea of glass. The inevitably inescapable outcome would be that Russia is broken up into about 20 smaller countries, never to be allowed to rebuild itself into what Russia was in the past. I myself guarantee that the lion's share of Eastern Russia would immediately revert to Communist China on the Asian mainland. Russia loves to wave around nuclear weapons as if it is the only nation on earth with nuclear weapons, but it is not. It would not fare well. Thusly, Putin has always been embarrassed by and deeply resentful of the United Kingdom. Very large numbers of Russia's rich began moving to Londongrad throughout the last quarter century. There are also visibly large numbers of bright, ambitious, talented, young Russians doing well at work and life in the United Kingdom who will never return to Russia. That is not to say that France, the United Germany, and the United States of America do not have very decent numbers of similar Russian migrant communities, but there be no British communities in Russia. Brits are not interested. Putin is profoundly resentful that the little United Kingdom draws so many Russians, and that great Mother Russia has no attraction or magnetism for any Brits. There is always an abiding and infantile disbelief in the Russian elite that a small and rainy island could be a disproportionately huge magnet for Russian talent, as well as an existential threat to the standing structure of Moscow, St. Petersburg, and Russia's other cities, ports, and mineral extraction and delivery systems, naval bases, and so on. The United Kingdom's large number of locked-in military allies and friendly neutral countries annoys Putin. He doesn't believe the United Kingdom deserves them and can't understand why it has them. While, as a small country, the United Kingdom could be destroyed very quickly, the Kremlin knows that as an enormous empire with power, wealth, and population concentrated into a very small number of locations, Russia is very vulnerable to British submarines. The United Kingdom is an annoying thorn in Russia's side. So on the very first day, the Swedish, Finnish, French, United German, and United Kingdom Aero Forces command aero superiority, not gain it, but command it from inception of conflict. On the second and third days, their combined aero forces will obliterate the Russian ground forces. Over the next couple of days, Communist China will grab the opportunity to grab enormous tracts of land in eastern Russia. After less than a week, NATO will advise the civilian population to evacuate St. Petersburg unless Putin is handed over to the International Criminal Court for trial of war crimes. A couple of days later, the new Russian government will offer unconditional surrender and ask for NATO's help against the Communist Chinese Empire of the East. But if Russia's true ally, Trump's America, is just another regional bully after all, then our former allies in Europe and Asia will close their doors and their markets to us. Which is why NATO leaders are already pushing back against Trump's Greenland threats, with 7 alliance members warning against United States imperialism. And in contrapunto, it's why taking Venezuela's oil hurts American imperial energy security. Washington's long-term interests require a smooth political transition in Caracas, not short-sighted mercantilism. In discussing the dramatic seizure of Venezuelan Presidente Nicolás Maduro and his wife, Celaya Flores, over the first full weekend of this year's opening month, President Donald Trump declared that the United States would now take back that country's oil, yet he has offered little clarity on what exactly this even means. How the maladministration answers that question will carry lasting consequences for global oil markets, geopolitics, and the world order, far more significant than any immediate price effects from more Venezuelan supply. If Trump oversees Venezuela's transition to a transparent democracy that can attract international investment, this could provide needed resources to rebuild the country and help ease energy prices over the long run. If, however, he seeks to impose a mercantilist model in pursuit of short-term financial gain, he will undermine the global energy market on which American imperial security depends. True, the forces remaking Latin America in the age of Trump are the region's revolution of the right. One might have expected the rise of a heavy-handed, nationalist, right-wing United States president to propel a left-wing resistance in Latin America. Instead, the Latin American right is having a resurgence. Once weighed down by an association with dictatorships of the Third World War era, the so-called Cold War, conservative parties have won several recent elections and are favored in many others. And the leaders who have benefited most from Donald Trump's return to office are not his critics, but those who admire, flatter, and even emulate him. If the current trend persists, the region's approach to organized crime, economic policy, and relationships with the American and Communist Chinese empires could fundamentally change. Yet Latin America's lurch to the right is not inevitable, especially if American imperial policies in region spark a backlash against Washington's ideological allies. Perhaps ironically, one of the biggest risks to a conservative shift in Latin America may be Trump himself. Sooner or later, our Western Hemisphere will organize against us and fight back. Far from making us more powerful, the pursuit of American dominance will make us weaker, eventually leaving us with no spear and no influence at all. Which is why Trump and Big Oil aren't on the same page. Donald Trump promised oil executives at Mar-a-Lago in 2024 that they would get a deal if they donated lavishly to his presidential campaign. They did. Almost 12 years later, it's safe to say Venezuela wasn't part of the deal that they signed up for. In the aftermath of the United States military raid that removed Nicolás Maduro from power, Donald Trump quickly pushed aside alleged drug trafficking in favor of oil revenue as his main reason for launching a surprise attack on Venezuela and renditioning Presidente Nicolás Maduro. The United States president has repeatedly pledged that the oil majors would be stepping over each other for a piece of the action. Now, the month before last, Trump has talked up his belief that American oil companies will step in to help revive Venezuela's battered oil industry, himself so telling NBC News, "A tremendous amount of money will be spent, and the oil companies will spend it. And then they will get reimbursed by us or through revenue. Thanks, but maybe no thanks?" Though smoke from the United States strikes has cleared over the Venezuelan capital of Caracas, its post-Maduro future is as cloudy as ever. United States oil giants aren't on the same page as the White House on Venezuela, and that could jeopardize Trump's mercantilist ambition to extract Venezuelan oil for America's benefit. Trump met with oil executives from the largest American companies on Friday, as dated the 9th of January. The maladministration started dictating Venezuela's future in the first full week of the first month of this year, beginning with assuming control over its oil sales and engineering a handover of at least a month of its oil production. But they weren't that excited. Trump convened almost 20 industry representatives at the White House on Friday into the second weekend of January, predicting they could come to an agreement today or very shortly thereafter to restart operations in the oil-rich country Trump had nominally invaded without setting a foot on the ground. But the executives expressed caution about re-entering the impoverished South American nation, let alone spending the $100 billion it would take to revive its oil production. Exempligratiate. The ExxonMobil chief executive officer, Darren Woods, summed up his judgment of Venezuela in a single word as currently uninvestable. Chevron and ConocoPhillips are among the oil firms holding off on making new commitments in Venezuela. American oil companies, with the notable exception of Chevron, ceased operations and left the country as their assets were expropriated by Venezuela's socialist dictatorship in the year of my legal sire's demise, circa 2007. Chevron, however, has operated under a special license that allows it to pump a quarter of Venezuela's daily output of heavy crude. The API, or American Petroleum Institute, first issued a cautious statement that said it was monitoring developments in Venezuela while stressing the importance of American imperial energy dominance. An API staffer familiar with the situation told the Fourth Estate in Washington that the trade group was caught off guard on the planning and execution of Trump's intervention in Venezuela. Politico magazine reported in the month before last that the Trump maladministration was hopeful that the API would set up an advisory group to help the White House plan Venezuela's future. The API staffer leaked that the organization hadn't actually been contacted by the Trump maladministration officials to do so at that time. The White House, however, still believes that oil companies will ultimately come around to its view. In a statement, Taylor Rogers, a White House spokeswoman, said, "All of our oil companies are ready and willing to make big investments in Venezuela that will rebuild their oil infrastructure. American oil companies will do an incredible job for the people of Venezuela and will represent the United States as well." A senior White House official told the Washington Press that the Cuban-Americo Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, and Energy Secretary Chris Wright will be taking the lead in speaking with oil executives, and that talks have already begun. Wright was upfront on the price tag the month before last. He acknowledged at a Goldman Sachs Energy Summit that rebuilding Venezuela's shattered oil sector would likely run into the tens of billions of dollars. So after Maduro, storm warnings in Venezuela forewarn $100 billion headache. Oil, Trump, an entrenched regime, and a discontented populace will make for an uncertain future in Venezuela. It's hard to overstate the neglect and mismanagement that has left the Venezuelan oil sector in ruins. It has been crippled by years of technical brain drain, equipment theft, and corruption that knocked the petrostate from its position of power in global markets as the founding member state of the OPEC, the oil production exportation cartel. Now even the state of North Dakota produces more oil than Venezuela each and every day. 1.1 million barrels compared to 900,000 respectively. By comparison, Venezuela used to produce more than double that amount 12 decades ago. Venezuela's state-owned oil company, PDVSA, still faces United States sanctions, and the Trump maladministration hasn't dialed them back as it looks to coerce the rest of Maduro's government it left in power to change policy. Restoring Venezuelan oil production to its record levels reached in the 1970s would require a huge influx of capital spending that would probably unnerve even the most experienced oil men. On X, Francisco Monaldi, director of the Latin American Energy Program, Rice University's Baker Institute, wrote, "From a purely technical standpoint, Venezuela could produce 4 to 5 times its current level of roughly 1 million barrels per day. Achieving that outcome, however, would require more than a decade of consistent effort and investments exceeding $100 billion. For oil companies, it's hard to justify massive new spending when putting more oil on the market would drive prices down even further. Oil markets are awash in the black earth blood, with trading prices hovering at $58 per barrel, at least until the last few days when Trump started another world war. There's been no big swing in either direction for oil prices in the week preceding, given Venezuela's tiny piece of the current oil market, 1% to be precise. Analysts have long projected an oil glut this year that will keep oil prices down for the time being. This is a new volatile chapter in Trump's presidency. First, it was Argentina to rescue a tropical Trumpanista with a $20 billion bailout to make Argentina great again. Now it's Venezuela to remove the leftist leader through military force while maintaining its communist regime, along all its intrinsic voodoo-nomic malpractices intact. There's no telling at what point Trump will pump the brakes on his appetite for intervention in Latin America and beyond, reminiscent of the 20th century's United States' gunboat diplomacy. In Trump's view of the world, might is right, and the American empire should be granted free rein in the Western Hemisphere. In a Monday social media post as dated January 4th, the State Department, under Marco Rubio, wrote, "This is our hemisphere," with his emphasis on the our. Republicans are sympathetic to the idea. The Senator Mark Rounds of South Dakota has admitted to the press that the doctrine wouldn't be out of place in the early 20th century, when powerful nations carved up the globe into sphere of influence. To quote his T, I think the fact that they've got large oil reserves and that those oil reserves right now have gone to the benefit of some of our adversaries, maybe it's time under the Monroe Doctrine that we actually stop some of that from occurring. With sanctions in place, Venezuela's biggest client for heavy crude is the Communist Chinese Empire. For oil companies, it amounts to a Darth Vader moment, similar to how foreign governments have negotiated with Trump on tariffs that can change by the month. In Star Wars, The Empire Strikes Back, Darth Vader delivers an infamous line, "I am altering the deal. Pray I don't alter it any further." If oil companies reach a Venezuela deal with Trump, they should be prepared for the terms to change at the speed of a Truth Social post. But the American imperial invasion of Venezuela isn't just about oil. When the American empire invaded Venezuela, oil was the obvious explanation. But experts concur that the stakes run deeper than access to reserves. Since the 1970s, the petrodollar system, cemented under Franklin Delano Roosevelt, has helped anchor global oil trade to the United States dollar. But as rivals explore alternatives to the dollar, Venezuela's vast reserves sit at the center of a wider struggle over monetary power. Spanish-language media moved from migration fatigue to geopolitical fervor after the kidnapping of Nicolás Maduro. What Latin America's press misses about Venezuela is that on the day after U.S. troops snatched Nicolás Maduro from Caracas last month, the month before last by now, the U.S. Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, calling out the American empire's list of usual suspects, Red China, Russia, and Iran, told an NBC interviewer, "We don't need Venezuela's oil. We have plenty of oil in the United States. What we're not going to allow is for the oil industry in Venezuela to be controlled by adversaries of the United States. They're not even in this continent. This is the Western Hemisphere. This is where we live." While it is indeed unlikely that Trump's invasion of Venezuela was intended solely to open up access to the country's deep oil reserves for American companies, the oil factor speaks to a broader forces that are also at play. Specifically, experts have pointed to oil's role in weakening the United States dollar's position as the financial instrument of choice on the international stage, which is in turn reducing the American empire's global economic dominance. Venezuela occupies an important material and symbolic role in energy economics. Crippled by stiff American imperial sanctions, Maduro's regime was selling the vast majority of its heavy crude to energy-hungry communist China on the Asian mainland, most of it traded in the Commu-Chinese renminbi, as well as paying off hefty Chi-Com, or Chinese communist loans, directly with barrels of oil. Although market socialist model China imports 74% of its oil, and Venezuelan reserves make up just 3% of its total energy imports, this trade represented a glaring carve-out in Latin America, a region that Trump has declared his own. Money is power, and although oil is still the most traded commodity in the world, it is more than just a commodity. For the American empire, the so-called petrodollars, scheme devised by the Roosevelt socialist maladministration in the mid-1940s, which cemented the price of Saudi Arabia's oil in dollars, bringing with it an enormous strategic advantage. The United States dollar was eventually adopted by other nations in the OPEC, the Organization of the Petroleum Exportation Cartel countries, creating a seemingly insatiable demand for the American currency and a steady stream of petrodollars that were reinvested in the United States Treasury and the financial market. That influx of capital has helped the American empire run large deficits and bankroll its our mammoth military, a key pillar of our global influence. But the cracks in American imperial hegemony are showing, declaring the dawn of a new world order. While announcing a trade deal with the Communist Chinese Empire last month, the Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney crooned, "The architecture, the multilateral system, that has been developing these is being eroded. The evolution of the global financial system, the role of the renminbi over time, the evolution of cross-border payments, these are important elements of how the new system's going to work. This erosion can be seen in the fact that for the first time since the 1990s, central banks around the world have more reserves in gold than in United States dollars. What's more, according to the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, the United States currency accounted for 56% of central banks' foreign exchange reserves in the first quarter of 2025, down from around 70% in Anno Domini 2000 of the Communal era. As the United States dollar weakens, there has been an increase in what the IMF calls non-traditional reserve currencies. NRCs, or NERCs, with the IMF confirming that in 2024, one of these, the renminbi, although it had stalled that year, had seen gains equivalent to up to a quarter of the dollar's decline. This year, the communist Chinese dictator Xi Jinping has vowed to turn the renminbi into a powerful currency that has a greater role in the international monetary system. The monolithic communist Chinese superstate is a key driver of the push to de-dollarize, with its own cross-border payment system, swap lines, and a central bank digital currency. But it is not alone. The revanchist and revisionist Russian Empire trades mostly in rubles and yuans. Heavily sanctioned for human rights violations, Iran sells most of its oil covertly to the centralized single-party state capitalist China via shadow tankers that bypass legal routes. Market Leninist China now settles a third of its trade in yuans, up from 20% in just as recently as 2022. So while there are many factors behind the American imperial intervention in Venezuela, it is, according to Gabriel Merino, an Argentine international relations expert who focuses on People's China, part of a general strategy to slow the relative decline, to try to prevent de-dollarization, and to control the oil supply. Maintaining control of global oil is a way to sustain the petrodollar. It's all connected in some way. Now, Merino himself sees three fundamental conditions as pushing de-dollarization. The first being the change in economic clout on the world map. More than half of the world's gross domestic product is now generated through Asia, primarily Red China and Asian India, incrementally increasing the pressure to move away from the United States dollar. The second major factor is BRICS. That's the economic alliance of countries first established by Brazil, Russia, India, Communist China, and South Africa in 2006, but now numbering 11 emerging economies. Virtually since its inception, BRICS has signaled the need to move away from the primacy of the United States dollar. So much so that Trump addressed the threat it poses to the United States itself soon after he was elected to a second midterm as president in 2024, promising 100% tariffs on BRICS countries if they continue their trajectory. The third factor is the economic war waged by Trump himself against the world. As the American empire increasingly attempts to weaponize our dollar through sanctions and tariffs, a backlash has occurred. Countries such as India and Brazil have developed their own domestic systems that enable customers to receive or make payments in their local currencies and avoid United States-based payment methods, such as Visa or MasterCard, with their merchant fees. In December, a pilot project for a BRICS currency and payment system called UNIT was unveiled. UNIT, all in the uppercase. It's not an acronym. The digital currency is 40% backed in gold and 60% in member currencies. Brazil has also included the renminbi in its foreign reserves and devised frameworks to settle trade in Communist Chinese currency, albeit researchers and precautions said maneuver reflects a pragmatic adaptation to shifting global dynamics aimed at diversification rather than de-dollarization. Indeed, all reputable experts caution against overstating the forces of de-dollarization. Recent data from the SWIFT, the Society for Worldwide Interbanks Financial Telecommunication, shows that the United States dollar is used in more than 50% of the payment services transactions, by far the largest share. In contrast, the unit is still at an early stage, if not downright prototypical, so its adoption and success are still unclear. And while Trump has made clear his intention to stop BRICS's efforts at de-dollarization, the factor has not emerged as a clear reason behind the American imperial intervention in Venezuela. Believing that for BRICS's efforts to have a significant international impact, cross-border operability needs to scale, Michaela Papa, the directress of research at the MIT Center for International Studies, who leads the BRICS Lab, so notes that America's rogue hegemonism rather appears to be driven by a mix of more prominent motivations, including, in her own words, leverage over oil revenues, regional security and stability, counter-narcotics efforts, migration pressures, and broader geopolitical interests. The dollar remains the dominant global currency. Current debates around de-dollarization focus on currency diversification rather than outright replacement. In practice, this takes the form of dollar risk management, reflected in greater use of local currencies for trade settlement, modest reserve device diversification, and experimentation with new payment infrastructures. The United States upped the ante on its geopolitical interest in Latin America with the Trump corollary, did I say that right? Corollary of the Monroe Doctrine, a foreign policy issued by President James Monroe in 1823 that laid claim to the Western Hemisphere as the American imperial sphere of influence, and thus closed to further European colonization. The so-called Monroe Doctrine, issued in late 2025, revives that rationale, leading to comments like the ones made by Marco Rubio the day after the American imperial attack. The Western Hemisphere is ours! Emphasizing that the Communist Chinese Empire controls the extraction and processing of 90% of minerals. Luca Ferrari, a professor at the National University of Mexico, whose work includes analyzing the geopolitics of energy, has gone on record to state, when they talk about the recovering control of the Americas, it's not just about resources. It's also about financial and commercial control. Its weak point is that it depends on the importation of many things, and ergo, over the decades, it has woven deep ties in Latin America. I'm speaking of China here, of course. Suffice to say, exerting dominance in region will take more than an orchestrated made-for-TV military intervention, as Trump performed with Nicolás Maduro. I've gone into how that entire performance was staged in the episode as dated, and here I will provide you the date of that episode so that you can review it. Please check into the episode dated July 4th. It was Japan's 4th of July, that episode. It was Wednesday, February 11th of this year. And make certain you upvote and do review that. That's where I exposed the sheer incompetence of the staged military performance in the abduction of Nicolás Maduro on Japanese 4th of July Day, the Japanese Foundation Day, in Chinese December. That was dated Wednesday, February 11th of this year. Review that at your leisure. It is time-stamped, and you should be able to identify that episode and review it at your leisure. Don't do so now, of course, because I'm just about to wrap up. Emiliano Teran Mantovani, a Venezuelan sociologist who specializes in political and economic ecology at la Universidad Central de Venezuela, has gone on record to say, "We've been saying that it's not just about oil. The issue that is on the table has to do with systemic change, and you have to look at it in an integral way. China is now South America's chief trading partner. That is unacceptable for the US. It's not sustainable for a reformulation of power," he says in the Espanol. "You can think of US power as a table that has a leg that is being eaten by termites. If you don't act quickly, that leg is going to split and the table, that system of industrial, financial, military, and cultural might, is going to fall down." The American empire has, in the past, made common cause with dictators when expedient, overthrown democratically elected leaders when nervous, and stayed out of righteous causes when doubtful of the upsides of getting involved. Presidents have made moves to boost the United States economy or their own political prospects. The war criminal Smedley Butler infamously accused the United States government of racketeering in 1935, a crime, but even purported deference to a higher principle constrained and directed the shape of global involvement. Trump has abandoned that pretense, and no one dares to stop him. He is getting his way right now, but the long-term effects will be dangerous. When a dirty cop walks the beat, he encourages bad behavior in his precinct rather than suppressing it. United States President Donald Trump has drawn a wave of criticism for his misactions in Venezuela, violations of international law, disdain for long-standing norms, and threats against other countries, not least allies like Denmark and Canada. Around the world, there is a palpable sense of uncertainty and foreboding, but it should already be obvious that things will not end well, neither for the American empire nor the rest of the world. None of this comes as a surprise to many on the left. We still remember United States President Dwight Eisenhower's valedictory warning about the industrial military complex that had emerged from World War II. It was inevitable that a country whose military spending matched that of the rest of the world combined would eventually abuse its arms to try to dominate others. To be sure, military interventions became increasingly unpopular following the American misadventures in Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan, and elsewhere. But Mr. Trump has never shown much concern for the will of the American people. Since he entered politics, and no doubt earlier, he has considered himself above the law, boasting that he could shoot someone on New York's Fifth Avenue without losing a single vote. The January 6th, 2021 insurrection at our American Capitol, whose anniversary we have just quote-unquote celebrated via the mandatory human sacrifice of a breeding-age white woman, shows that he was right. And by that, I'm not referring to the young lady at Charlottesville. I'm referring to Renee Good. The 2024 election only reinforced Mr. Trump's hold on the Republican Party, ensuring that it will do nothing to hold him accountable. Not now, not ever. The capture of Venezuela's dictator, Nicolás Maduro, was brazenly illegal and unconstitutional. As a military intervention, it required congressional notification, if not approval. And even if one stipulates that this was a case of law enforcement, international law still requires that such actions be pursued through extradition. One country cannot violate another's sovereignty or snatch foreign nationals, let alone heads of state, from their home countries. The Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, the Russian dictator Vladimir Putin, and others have been indicted for war crimes, but no one has proposed deploying soldiers to seize them wherever they happen to be. Even more brazen are Mr. Trump's subsequent remarks, he claims that his maladministration will run Venezuela and take its oil, implying that the country will not be permitted to sell to the highest bidder. Many commentators have already addressed the implications for global peace and stability. If the American empire claims the Western Hemisphere as its sphere of influence, the Donroe Doctrine, and bars Market Leninist China from accessing Venezuelan oil, why shouldn't Communist China on the Asian mainland claim all East Asia and bar the United States from accessing Taiwanese chips? Doing so would require it to deny America access to my Taiwan's microchips would not require Communist China on the Asian mainland to run my Taiwan at all, only to control our policies, particularly those allowing exports to these United States. This could be done conceivably by threat of force. It is worth remembering that the great imperial power of the 19th century, the Greater British Empire, did not fare well in the 20th. And the world currency seemed forever to be the pound sterling. Through the centuries preceding 2 world wars that knocked the pound sterling off its perch and replaced it with the almighty dollar. If most other countries cooperate in the face of this new American imperialism, as well they should, the long-term prospects for the American empire will be even worse. After all, the United Kingdom at least tried to export salutary governing principles to its colonies, introducing some modicum of the rule of law, a modicum of the rule of law in theory, if not in justice, and other imperial institutions. For prosperity requires the rule of law. Without it, there is ever-present uncertainty. Will the government seize my assets? Will officials demand a bribe to overlook some minor peccadillo? Will the economy be a level playing field, or will those in power always give the upper hand to their cronies? The English Lord Acton famously observed that power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. But Mr. Trump has shown that one does not need absolute power to engage in unprecedented corruption. Once the system of checks and balances starts to fall apart, as indeed it has in these United States, the powerful can operate with impunity. The costs will be borne by the rest of society, because corruption is always bad for the economy. One hopes that we have reached peak Trump, that this dystopian era of kakistocracy, government by criminals, will end with the, matter of fact, let me expound on that. This dystopian era of kakistocracy is beyond kleptocracy, which is governance by criminals. Kakistocracy is government by imbeciles. Literally, what was it called? Idiotopia. What was that film again? Idiocracy. Kakistocracy is idiocracy. And while one hopes that we've reached peak Trump vis-a-vis this dystopian era of kakistocracy, that it will end with the 2026 and 2028 elections. But Reöpen, Zhonghua Renmin Gonghe Guan, the People's Republic of China, and the rest of the world cannot rely on hope alone. They should be devising contingency plans which recognize that the world does not need the United States. What does America offer that the world cannot do without? It is possible to imagine a world without the Silicon Valley giants, because the basic technologies they offer are now widely available, and exclusively so in terms of microchip technology from Taiwan. Others would rush in, and they may well establish much stronger safeguards. It is also possible to imagine a world without American universities and scientific leadership, because Mr. Trump has already done his utmost to ensure that these institutions struggle to remain among the world's best. We have a brain drain of our best minds into Reöpen right now. So it is possible to imagine a world where others no longer depend on the American market as well. Trade brings benefits, but less so if an imperial power seeks to grab a disproportionate share for itself. Filling the demand gap posed by the United States' persistent trade deficits will be a lot easier for the rest of the world than the challenge facing the American empire of dealing with the supply side. A hegemon that abuses its power and bullies others must be left in its own corner. Like Stalin's initial withdrawal from the world to mobilize into a war economy, to wage revolutionary class war against the West, Trump is doing the same, but on behalf of the ultra-elite plutocracy, the Epstein class. Resisting this new Epsteinian imperialism is essential for everyone else's peace and prosperity. While the rest of the world should hope for the best, it must plan for the worst. And in planning for the worst, there may be no alternative to economic and social ostracism of the United States. No recourse but a policy of containment of the American empire. But let's rebuild in 2026. Because a citizen can choose his or her form of peaceful protest. I have hosted 1,000 episodes, many of them scrubbed from YouTube, my own channel. Among other things, in terms of my efforts, about the appalling direction of summary Supreme Court rulings on its shadow docket. I have spraketh about the legal position and the rule of law to the blood boys on every estate my son's husband holds within the borders of our golden bear state nation of California, the economic engine of the United States. California, its economy is so large that it ran neck and neck with United Germany for a time. Now we're behind again, but barely. We're still the largest economy in the world. Were it not for the Communist Chinese Empire, the Empire of Japan, and DäWÍKÖ Deutschland, the new United Germany. California is behind only those economic polities. We are still far above and ahead of the United Kingdom as an economy. If there were a Cal exit and California seceded from the Union, America's economy would crash to the level of Nicaragua, Morocco, Malawi, or Zimbabwe. Without California, America's just another third world shithole. But we can all look back over 2025 and hope we are rising to the challenge of saving the Republic. All 500 states in Union and all our territories. We are already in the fight for free and fair elections in 2026, when so much is at stake. We know Trump does not like to lose. Let's make him feel pain. That pain will come from change, and change must come from the people, not from podcast hosts and pundits. However, when it comes to steering whatever change is realized. You're going to need me. Democracy for now demands citizen participation. And we must all stay well informed and not shrink from discussing the issues with friends, family, and in our own communities. In fact, beyond our communities. You must, as Christ once asked of not just his disciples, but any who would listen, you must spread the word. Let others know that the son of Adolf Hitler is alive and well, and hosting a podcast every Sunday and Wednesday night. For what is life without hope? Things in 2026 have to be looking up. But we're going to go through a lot of hell together first. I'll be here for you, if I'm so allowed. But YouTube will only allow me if you offer your support. First your upvotes, then your comments in any episode before they disabled commentary. They disabled commentary after the February 4th episode. Any episode before that, enter your comments. I will get notifications and will do my best to respond when able. And contributions. I need them more than ever. These are terrifying and trying times. Times of desperation for us all. But I'm your only hope for a reorganization that can lead to Renaissance, a renewal of the American project for the third Christian millennium can be instigated here in the 21st century. And it starts right here, right now. For now, we're ending stream. Rejoin us midweek. And, if at all possible, bring a friend. Best wishes to you all. Hugs to the lads. Kisses to the ladies. And, I'm not allowed to enter links on my own chat. If our dear Aristides is awake, which I would find hard to believe because he's pretty wiped out. But if he's there, he's free to say good morning. And we'll call it a night. I believe he's out cold, so everybody into the night tide. I'm not allowed to put links in my chat, so you'll just have to reference what's on the screen. DouglasDietrich.com, not the decoy button in the middle, but in both the upper right and left-hand corners will allow you to donate even without PayPal using any method that you want at DouglasDietrich.com, spelled on screen. Also reference on screen for my PayPal, paypal.me/DouglasDDietrich. The lovely angel on my shoulder, Brooke Hagberg, puts $100 in my production account monthly so that I can pay my bills to maintain, Microsoft Teams subscription so that I can maintain these calls. And the rest of you, my personal account is best because no pound of flesh is extracted by PayPal over that venue. Please contribute. My life literally depends upon it. For now, into that gentle night. Most blessed be. And bring a friend on Wednesday.